Bum ba bum bum ba bum bum ba bum ba. A million years to rise from the earth. The rich can't tell you what you're worth. Their false gods cast their spells on you. Can't reach the stars because rent is due. Break the chain. Break the chain. Here we are. Boxing Day, as they call it. Here we are, Boxing Day. I hope you guys had a good Christmas, those of you that celebrate it. And even if you don't celebrate it, I hope you had a good couple of days, a good weekend. Eric, good to see you, my man. You must have just been pounding on the keyboard. Let's go, let's go. Refresh, 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 refresh. Good to see you, my man. Yeah, I am in a calm space. Calm space. Had a busy weekend as I always do, doing capitalism. Eric finally finished reading Manufacturing Consent. There you go. That's a chew. That's a chew of a read right there. That's a Mao. That's going through and just like very thick, thorough, very dense read. Manufacturing Consent, an important one. An important one. I do feel as though the concepts of manufacturing consent have been well captured in a lot of the summaries and the summation. That manufacturing consent itself gets very technical, which I think it has to. Like you need that. Like you need a technical book that really goes through examples and really gets into the meat and potatoes of everything and really takes you through a lot of stuff. And I think that's good to read. And I think, but it makes for a dry read. Very, very dense technical document, but it's good. Oh, have I looked into Serbia? Is there stuff going on in Serbia? Of course, nobody's talking about that. Because, like, Serbia. Is there a Serbian revolution? Serbia revolution. Good to see you grinning. I suspect today's going to be a pretty quiet one on the stream today, guys. The Captain on Twitch, I hope you had a good Christmas too, Captain. I suspect that this stream is going to be a pretty quiet one. I feel like Christmas is a lot of people. We're certainly not talking about the Serbian Revolution of 1804. Timeline. No, I'm not seeing anything. Serbia. Let's just go Serbia news. One would think that if there was a big event going on in Serbia, Serbian opposition, hunger strike, Serbia vows, Serbian police. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything, dude. Like, if there was like a big uprising or something serious happening, it would be like really, really front page. It would be like the thing that people would be talking about. So if Serbian police detain at least 38, opposition continue protests against election results. Oh, okay, yeah, that seems not illegitimate. So they've had an election. Thousands gathered in front of a Belgrade police station on Monday evening, support of those arrested during protest against what they say was electoral fraud in Serbia's recent parliamentary and local elections. Serbian police say on Monday they've detained at least nearly 40 people. Serbia against violence. Yeah, we'll see you. Serbian President Alexander Vucic. Well, let's dig a touch deeper. Let's put our feet on the ground. Right? Let's put our feet on the ground. Serbia. Right? So if it I'll admit I am not standing here as the expert of Serbia. I don't know that much about Serbian politics. If there was a Serbian in here, I would defer to them for sure. But I mean, like, it's on the border. It's It's like there's Kosovo, right? We remember the 90s. Uh, uh, yeah, I mean, if it is electoral fraud and there is like uh, yeah, it's like the most common story ever, right? The West manages to push forward an agenda and push forward a leader, and they use election fraud in order to secure power in a region. And the captain asks, "What is a color revolution?" Great question, Captain. A color revolution is a revolution that gets put on by a secondary body who use the revolution as a cover. So, like, a populace uprises against its leadership. That's a revolution, right? Uh, uh, America funds a group of people in Vietnam to overthrow the government. That's a color revolution, right? It's not the people of the country overthrowing the country. It's a combination of people in the country with military or financial support from a secondary source overthrowing the country on behalf of that secondary source. That's what I would call a color revolution, right? So, like, a lot of people accuse what's going on in Hong Kong of there's an awful lot of color revolutionaries in Hong Kong, which I think is ostensibly true. I don't think that that's the defining characteristic of what's going on in Hong Kong, but there is some of that going on. People have described the Tiananmen Square situation as an attempt at a color revolution, right? So like the Soviet Union, the people of the Soviet Union overthrowing the Tsars revolution, the people I'm really thinking of, like, I'm totally blanking on like the key example, but there's so many good ones. Right? There's so many good ones like, especially in Latin America, like almost every single time there's a coup of a Latin American government, it's a color revolution, right? It's being put on as a revolution, but it isn't. The only critique, hold on, what's going on? The only critique I have with it is that there's no material analysis. At the same time, I can see so many of the concepts being alive and well. Yeah, I mean, Noam Chomsky, as useful as he is to read, is not a Marxist, right? He's not a Marxist. He's never done serious critical analytical work on any of the communist states, or even communism as a concept generally, right? Like, he obviously understands what Marxism is, and I'd be surprised if he hadn't read some Marx, but he's not the guy that you should go to when it comes to talk about communism or anything like this. And I actually think that's one of the reasons he was permitted to survive, right? Why is this academic who is clearly an anti-war advocate, who is clearly a critique of America and American empire, why is he allowed to persist through the McCarthy period? Why is he allowed to persist and become a university professor, no less? And I think it's just because he wasn't a communist. Like, he didn't have, and anytime he talked about communism, he was like, he thought pretty dimly of it. But it looks to me like he was mainly informed by his parents. Like, he never actually did any serious analytical work or serious academic work on communism, which is why he doesn't talk about it that much. And then you find people like Michael Parenti, who do serious analytical work, and they critique Chomsky specifically on that point. So, yeah, like, he doesn't have a material analysis because he's not a Marxist, right? Like, he's what does he call himself? As anarchist. Like, he has anarchist principles. It helps me understand how they can pivot their narrative so easily from Ukraine and Israel, how they have double standards. I mean, the American empire has no standards. Starting a new book called The Autonomy of Fascism. It's a left-wing book that tries to understand what is fascism. What's interesting is the methodology they're using. Yep, Chomsky. Eric has just finished Manufacturing Consent. Good to see you, Tim. Chomsky is a massive disappointment. No, I don't think Chomsky is a disappointment. I only think that Chomsky is a disappointment if you elevate him beyond his status, right? He always was exactly what he was, and he's never promised to be anything else, and he's never promised to be anything other than what he is. Like, he's not a revolutionary, right? Chomsky is not a revolutionary. He's never attempted to organize any kind of revolutionary fervor. He's always been a staunch anti-war advocate. He's always been a critic of American empire, and that's what he's always been. And so I think that what's going on is that there's this younger generation that is hungry for revolutionary rhetoric and revolutionary writing. I think that's where the people are going, is that they're hungry for that. And so they're seeking out people who are speaking a revolutionary language and talking in terms of revolution and talking in terms of how do we actually see things happen, and how do we actually change things, and how do we actually move forward. And they're realizing that Chomsky doesn't have the solutions to this problem, which he never did. Like, he never did, right? And so I learned that when I was 19. Like, you read Chomsky and you're like, okay, yeah, this is like really, really strong, heavy critiques. What's the solution? Vote blue no matter who. Oh, okay. You know, like, all right. So that's just what he was and what he's always been. He's still extremely useful. He's still extremely prescient. He's still extremely rooted in his belief system. And I think he's pretty upfront about what his belief system is. And I think if it wasn't for this pesky thing called electoral politics, like if everybody was able to just stand up and vote how they felt and have that actually matter in any kind of meaningful way, then I think Chomsky would be your guy. But that's not the real world. That's not what's actually going on. And Chomsky's concerns, when you actually bring this up to him, are that, yeah, you're going to face military force. It's like, correct. Like, that's the truth. Like that's the whole observation, right? That's the whole observation. And he's just, like, not really interested in organizing along those lines, or even really discussing things and discussing power along those lines, right? And it's just like, so for lots and lots of people, I think lots and lots of people think that he's valuable for his critiques, but in terms of actually manifesting anything serious and real into the world, you know, he's not going to be your guy, and he never was. Yeah, Chomsky's an interesting fellow. Like, he is. He's interesting, and I actually think that, like, any leftist of any stripe needs a certain degree of Noam Chomsky. Like, I just don't think that you can shrug and be like, oh, well, and move on from Chomsky. I think that he's too important. He's obviously, like, his work on 9/11 alone, like, his work on 9/11 alone is so important. So I just think that there's a lot there that needs to be dug into. Eggs D, I'm halfway through manufacturing consent. Need to pick it up. It's useful stuff just to be able to see it in the world, right? Like manufacturing consent should simply be grade 10 reading. Like, we should not read Hamlet for the third time. We should read manufacturing consent and have a serious conversation. The fact that there is not really any conversation about media manipulation that exists in high school teaching should tell you pretty much what the purpose of a high school education is, right? High school education does not exist to educate anybody of anything other than to be indoctrinated into a system of capital. That's the whole reason it exists. Yeah, Chomsky's theories on the acquisition of language are fascinating. Yeah, I mean, he is a linguist first and foremost, right? And I mean, I think his biggest strength was basically banishing the old guard, really pointing out that the old theory was clearly not true, right? People have criticized Chomsky's own theories about what is true, but definitely Chomsky is the guy that stood up and said full-throatedly, clear as day, it simply cannot be the case that kids come in and they are a blank slate. It's obviously false. Here is some evidence to show you that it is false. Now that it is falsified, what is real? What does exist? What theory do we actually have? And so he's putting that all forward. The world is watching what it's being done to Trump. Capitalism makes us feel inadequate. Yeah. Unfulfilled if we don't buy their shit. Yeah, just don't buy their shit. The world is watching what's being done to Trump, saying they have lost all credibility on the U.S. Yeah, I mean, like, what's happening to what's happening in America? It's just some third world shit, right? My favorite thing that I'm seeing recently. Did I even pull up an article for it? I'm going to talk about it. I wish I had pulled up an article for it. Is they're really trying? Oh yeah, yeah. They're really trying to convince us that the economy's great. Like they're really, really trying to convince us that everything's going great. Right? Like, how were so many economists so wrong about the recession? Fears of recession are fading fast, but the debate over the flaws of economic forecasting are just beginning. Like, literally the thrust of the entire argument is that, no, the economy's doing great. Unemployment is down. Everything's super great. Look how great everything is. It's great, guys. What's going on? It's great. Like literally, this is the argument that they're trying to use. And then if you actually look at the raw data and you actually look at the way the economy is actually working, we're actually doing worse than in the Great Depression. Like you're not going to be able to buy a house. You're barely getting your bills paid. And these hacks are all trying to tell you everything's fine. Actually, everything's completely fine. We have somebody named Jamie LaBeouf. Jamie LaBeouf. On Twitch. Good to see you, my man. Good to see you. Welcome aboard. We're having a pretty calm one today, I think. Yeah, John, they are doing to Trump exactly what they do to third world countries. I just don't think it's going to work, right? Content, my God, people are in a mood at work tonight. Yeah, I mean, it's like Boxing Day, right? We should all be asleep. We should all be hibernating, right? This idea that like let's go off to work today. It's -12. Do 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 do. Like, these guys are trying to look us right in the face and tell us that everything's totally fine and that your lived experience with this failed system is wrong, right? That you're supposed to ignore your eyes, your ears, your own experience, your own bank account, your own daily grind with the system that exists, and they're trying to tell you that everything's fine. Like that's literally what they're trying to do. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And now they're just like literally willing to throw, like last year, this time, 85% of economists in one poll predicted a recession this year. And that was an optimistic take compared to the 100% probability for a recession forecast 2 months earlier. Yeah, but we're obviously in a recession. If you actually measure a recession based on how people are doing, right? Like if you measure a recession based on 3 indicators that are positive, then you could make it basically sound whatever it likes, right? None of this happened. Both inflation and unemployment are headed in the right direction because the defining characteristic of what is or is not a recession is inflation and unemployment, right? Those are the only key indicators. There's no other indicator whatsoever that indicates what is or is not a recession, right? So redefine what a recession is, and then you can say whatever you like. And then 85% of economists are wrong. I mean, you guys know me. I make the argument that the priest class of the capitalist death cult is often wrong. But now they're throwing each other under the bus. Economists have yet to figure out why things went so well. Things are going great, guys. Things are going great. Jamie LaBeouf, I'm new on your channel. So what's on the agenda today? We go through the daily news, my man. Today we are, I think, there's always 3 major sections, okay? The first section is usually America's collapsing, right? Just dealing with America's collapse. Here's America throwing itself under the bus, basically saying, oh, everything's fine. Everything's totally fine. Like, no, it's not. Like, it's really, really clear it's not, right? Like, nobody can buy a house. If you can buy one house, it's like this shitty shithole that's falling apart that you need to spend a whole bunch of money to fix up, right? Nobody's getting a second place, except like the small, tiny percentage of people who can buy 20 houses, right? Oh, there's this little percentage of people who can buy 300 houses, and they're doing great. You just needed to work harder, right? So the whole thing is coming apart at the seams. And then the second section will get into more international politics, usually I mean, we're definitely gonna be talking about this guy today, mainly because there are major protests happening in the region. Right? Protests erupt in Argentina. Can't imagine why. Can't imagine why people are protesting this fucking guy. This cartoon caricature of a villain. It's like they took Adolf Hitler and said, not cartoonish enough. Needs to be more of a lunatic. And then the third section is usually about climate change. Although I don't know that I have any climate change related stuff today, because honestly, it's turning into the same story. Climate change is coming to wipe us all out, and no one's doing anything about it. Right? Like, nothing new there. Just like hug your children, right? Stop going to work so much, right? If your capitalist bosses get mad, be like, I don't care. Who cares what you think? Like, get basically as much money as you can to pay your bills and have like a good time otherwise. Try and spend as little amount of time on capitalism as you can. Focus on your friends, focus on your family. Like this whole grind set Bugatti bullshit. Like it's wild how like these guys can get exposed as being like sex traffickers and rapists, and everybody's just like alpha male Bugattis. It's just like, okay, cool, bud. Like normal society. This is a completely normal place where we do normal things all the time. Yeah, it's completely normal for us to abandon each other so thoroughly, right? Oh yeah, Millie is a moron. Like, absolutely. You have to be a moron to enact the policies that he's got, right? Like, even on the face of it, just like literally, what we're gonna do is we're gonna get rid of the Ministry of Transportation, and then that's gonna make transportation better. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? like it just doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Like, we might as well get into this. Protests erupt in Argentina against Javier Milei economic shock decree. The guy is literally standing up saying, like, we're going to destroy the economy and that's going to make the economy better. Thousands took to the street in Argentina in the past few days to protest a series of economic decrees proposed by President Javier Milei. On December 20th, Milei announced sweeping deregulations to Argentina's economy, sparking backlash from opposition members and groups representing unemployed people. Riot police were dispatched at major protest sites in the capital, Buenos Aires, including outside of Congress and the Plaza de Mayo, the city's main square. Milei's scammer and money for education, not for the IMF, read banners of protesters in the capital, according to El Pay. In all, Milei announced over 300 measures to deregulate much of Argentina's economy, a move which has been called unconstitutional by some observers. Milei, who has been described as an anarcho-capitalist, fascist, set out to reduce the government's involvement and oversight in many aspects of Argentina's economy, including announcing that he would privatize many state-owned companies, would decrease labor protections, and remove regulations that limit the amount of agriculture and productive land that can be owned by foreign companies. His so-called necessity and urgency decree, revoking the rent bill, allowing landlords to negotiate contracts with tenants without a set time limit or price control, as well as allowing them to negotiate in other currencies. Argentina, especially Buenos Aires, has been experiencing a rent crisis for half a decade. Revoking the law that prohibits the privatization of state-owned companies. Reforming the labor bill to extend an employee's trial period from 3 to 8 months, and a reduction of the indemnization that companies must pay when they terminate employees. Revoking the land bill, which established that only 15% of the country's protective land be owned by foreigners, making way for international firms to buy up Argentina's agricultural and resource-rich land. So, colonialism. Basically, this guy's saying, let's do some colonialism. Modifying the Societies Bill to allow public fan-owned soccer clubs to privatize. Opening up the country's satellite internet services market to foreign competition. Argentina's satellite internet is currently managed by state-owned telecom Arsat. We are doing our utmost to try to reduce the crisis we inherited, said Milei on a televised broadcast December 20th. We designed a shock stabilization plan. The president also announced that he would call for extraordinary sessions of Congress in order to present a package of bills to push forward his new economic reforms. The DNU is going to have to go through Congress, wrote journalists Matej Mauzet on X. The only differences with a normal law are that, 1, it comes into force before passing through Congress and not after, and 2, as long as only one of the two chambers approves it, it is firm. You don't need both of you to approve it. Experts have begun questioning the legality of Milley's decree. According to constitutional lawyer Andres Gil Domenech, the decree is an attempt to obtain the sum of public power and to supplant Congress in its entirety in the legislative function. Daniel Sabse, president of the Argentina Association of Constitutional Law, also called the decree unconstitutional and mad. The exceptional circumstances required by the Constitution for the issuance of the DNU do not exist, Sabse told La Nation. Former President Alberto Fernandez, who was fiercely criticized by Milei in this year's elections, also weighed in. The Republic is at risk by the folly that the president exhibits when issuing measures contrary to the Constitution and the interests of our people, he wrote. A main architect of Millei's controversial decree, Federico Sturzenegger, took to Radio Mitra to defend the measure. The president didn't send the measures through Congress because the idea is to show an image of regime change, he said. He led the central bank from 2015 to 18. Milley's party holds 37 of the 257 seats in the House and 7 of the 72 in the Senate. Yeah, listen to this. His party only holds 37 of 257 seats and 7 of the 72 in the Senate. How does this guy have power? He will need to work closely with other coalitions to ensure his decree is passed in one of the two houses of Congress. Addressing the protests against this measure on December 21st, Milley told Radio Rivadavia, "There may be people suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. They are in love with the impoverishing model and look at communism with nostalgia, love, and affection." This is the guy. This is here. He shared this message on Christmas. Right? Yeah, the CIA, they lost it when he got elected, right? No, this guy's worse than Reagan, my man. We got a guy in here, 2024, more like 1939. Yeah, good name, dude. Yeah, he's worse than Reagan by a lot. At least Reagan had charisma, right? This guy's like, for real, I highly advise everybody go out and actually watch some interviews with this guy. It becomes easy very quickly that this guy is like pretty much suffering with some kind of mental issue. He's got something going on, right? Like he's too forceful. He's too aggressive. He's like running for his life from his father. Like that's just what it feels like when you listen to this guy talk. It's just crazy. Yeah, shock therapy reduced Russian life expectancy by 10 years. Milley forgot that it was his buddy Macri who kept the largest IMF loans and gave it to his family and friends. Yeah. Like, look, to me, it's always obvious who these guys are, right? They're always pursuing their own agenda of grandeur, right? They have an idea of what they are and who they are, and that's what they're interested in pursuing. And in a lot of cases, it literally is just, oh, I can make a lot of money right now. Oh shit, I could just make money. Like that's who like Doug Ford is, for example, right? And like for a lot of these guys, it's like, oh, you know what I can do? I can just like privatize a small section of the economy over here, and then I'll sit on the board of directors of that privatized economy, and then I'll siphon money away from that thing I privatized and just parasticize it and become a boil. Mike, here in the province of Ontario, that's exactly what Mike Harris did. He just became a parasite on the long-term care home system. Doug Ford's doing the same thing because that's how you make money, right? And if your goal is to just make money and you know, like have a fat, healthy retirement so you can like go to resorts and shit, you know, there's plenty of politicians that operate that way. I'm not talking about Trudeau, Ed Harris. I hope you are the Ed Harris, by the way. In my mind, you are the Ed Harris. Just so you know. So when you talk, I'm constantly thinking about like Westworld, Ed Harris. I loved you in that Russian sniper movie. Yeah, you did great. The I do have a thing about Trudeau here, but like for long-term listeners, like Trudeau is like the most uncontroversial figure of all time. Right-wingers try to make Trudeau a much more controversial figure than he actually is, and they do so by being like, he's ushering in communism, which is just the funniest. It's just the funniest thing to watch these, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, you're just admitting that you don't know anything. Like, anything at all, in the biggest possible way. To just stand up and basically pronounce to the world, I'm illiterate and proud of it. Like, but Trudeau's not a communist. He's a capitalist, right? He's just a capitalist. He's just a shitty capitalist. Like, maybe you could say he's a reformist. Like, that's possibly true. That to a certain degree he is somewhat reformist. But the system of capital is well protected by someone like Justin Trudeau. He's not interested in a path of communism or anything. So he's in my view, like, he's done a couple of things that I think are good, but like those things are so small in scale in the grand scheme of things that as soon as he's out of office, he'll essentially be forgotten. Like, he's not as meaningful a prime minister as all that. His tenure has not been that impactful in the history of Canada. Trudeau's father was a close friend with Fidel Castro. Close friend? Like, they met. Were they like they were good buddies? Like they were besties, right? Like there's pictures of them shaking hands and smiling in the same space, I suppose. But like, that's not unique. Fidel Castro met with everybody, right? And as we all know, Justin Trudeau is Fidel Castro's son, right? That's the way the meme goes. But I don't know. Describing Fidel Castro and Justin Trudeau's father, Trudeau Sr., as like good friends seems a bit overwrought, if you ask me. Like, Trudeau Sr. was a politician. He understood how to do politics, right? He wasn't like a god king or anything. He was, and he was a lot smarter than Justin. Like, he was a lot more aware of how the systems of power actually worked than Justin Trudeau. Like, Justin Trudeau is basically he reads cue cards. That's essentially his whole shtick. He reads cue cards. They put cue cards in front of him. He reads those cue cards, right? PM Trudeau gives Poilievre credit for tapping into Canadians' concerns about affordability. Really interesting interview, by the way, because it really does make him look like a guy who just doesn't really quite know what's going on. Because that's exactly what he is, right? Pierre Trudeau is critiquable, I think, but to say that he sucked is a difficult position to hold. He's the reason we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. His party's signature is all over the healthcare legislation that exists in Canada. I think that you give more credit to Tommy Douglas for that than you do the Liberal Party, but it's not like the Liberal Party stonewalled it at the end of it all. Like, Jean Chrétien's signature is on that document. So Pierre Elliott Trudeau is a more meaningful prime minister in huge ways than his son, for sure. And definitely, I think, is a pivotal prime minister in the history of Canada, especially as it legislatively moved away from the British Crown, right? Like that's something that Americans don't actually know about Canadian history or actually think about in Canadian history. That we were still under the jurisdiction of the British Crown, and it wasn't until, I don't know if it was Pierre Trudeau or if it was slightly before him, but it was the Liberals, basically, that we actually declared our independence and became our own independent legislative body. And through that process, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was enshrined. And I mean, you can critique Pierre Elliott Trudeau for lots of things, I think, but one of the things I definitely would critique him on is his pandering to the Ukrainian far right, which he definitely did on lots of occasions. So he always had these like weird little neo-Nazis in his back pocket. But he's an important Canadian figure. Probably the most important Canadian leader in the post-war era. Since then, it's basically just been a bunch of guys capitulating power to capitalists, including his own son, essentially. So, yeah, Pierre Trudeau is the first and one of the only NATO leaders to meet with Castro. There's a photo where Castro holds baby Justin Trudeau. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, dude. Does that make them good friends? Like, is that all it takes to be, like, besties? To be best buds? Jamie, you know what? You seem cool. I will sub to you. Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate that, bud. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. Hit the bells, hit the whistles. If you want to donate some money to my Patreon, link below. It gets you into the Discord. And just so you know, Jamie, I am cool. Thank you. Thank you for noticing. June, what did I get for Christmas? I do not celebrate Christmas, so thank you so much. What did I get for Christmas? I got your adulation and love. That's what I got, June. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I literally spent the day just hanging out with some friends, and that was it. And of course, Justin Trudeau is saying of his opposition, like, what's so annoying about this election is that no one is willing to call out the elephant in the room, right? No one is willing to stand up and be like, hey, have you noticed there's all these capitalists? Like, we've got articles like this from Bloomberg. Come on now. Come on, John. You're a professional. Get your act together, Jonathan. Yeah. You got articles like this from BNN Bloomberg. High levels of immigration and not enough housing has created a supply crisis in Canada. Point at any problem other than the problem. The problem, I love this. I love this about the housing crisis. I love how the capitalists are so willing to throw themselves under the bus in such an amazing way. Like, it's so amazing watching them pull out a sword and cut off one of their own arms, so long as you don't plunge into the dark heart of capitalism, that they will stand directly in front of you and say, yeah, of course we completely failed to create enough housing and account for supply. We're total failures. Capitalism doesn't work. It doesn't know how to create enough supply for basic needs like housing. Absolutely. Total failure. We capitalists acknowledge that we are a complete failure. And also we're bringing in huge number of immigrants, which is a problem, we say. Again, capitalist failure, just failure upon failure. We're the worst. We suck so bad. And why are they willing to stand in front of us and confess openly their abject and total failures and show you that capitalism fails by their own argument? Because they know that the actual problem is that they're hoarding housing. They know that the actual problem is that they've taken huge swaths of the housing off of the market, and they're just holding on to it like it's a currency. And if they do rent it out, they rent it out at $3,000 a second. Like, they're not interested in joining this rental market because they're using housing as a form of currency amongst each other. They're not willing to actually meaningfully talk about that. Because if they actually were to actually talk about the actual problem as it actually stands, then people would say, well, stop that. You don't get to have 30 houses. You don't get to just sit on 100 properties off in the corner somewhere, right? Put those back on the market. Tough shit, right? Tough shit. And so what's the actual solution as far as they're concerned? Well, scapegoat immigrants, right? If we can get people to go after immigrants, let's round up all the immigrants, right? Like, then the capitalists will be completely happy with that. They don't give a shit about human life. They don't care. But also, if they can convince you to pay taxes to build more houses for them to buy and pull off the market and use as a currency, then that's great. So it's the whole thing is a complete and total con, predicated on the admission of their own failure in the first place. And we're all just supposed to buy into this. We're all just supposed to be like, oh yeah, they didn't build enough housing. Capitalist, the greatest system in the world. Like, sometimes we're a bit dopey. Sometimes. John, did you hear on PEI where the landlord no longer wants people on rent? They're trying to turn their unit for condo selling. Yep, condos, 100 apiece. Yeah, 100K apiece. Look, if you have a section of your society that has so much money that the accruing of further money is not valuable to them. Like if I have $1 billion and you say, "Hey, can I buy that for $100,000?" I'm not even going to look at you. I'm not even going to notice it. I'm not even going to step into the room. It's not even worth my time to pick up the phone to have the conversation with you. I lose more money talking to you about selling you the property than I do get back from selling you the property. Like, do you understand? Like, when you have $1 billion, money just loses its value completely. What these people are actually contending with is, how do I take my wealth and get it out of currencies? How do I take my wealth and get it out of currency exchanges where I actually lose money, right? It's difficult now to keep your money in dollars. It's difficult now to keep your money in treasuries. It's difficult now to do these things because they're starting to introduce things like negative interest rates on people of a certain wealth quality, because they understand that, like, this is fucking crazy, that the banks are basically charging these guys a fee to hold on to their money. And so people are looking around for, where do I hold my money so it doesn't lose value? Well, I know a great place: housing, right? Housing is only going up in value. Housing doesn't depreciate over time, right? Housing only goes up. So I'll take my currency, I'll take my dollars, which are diminishing over time, right? I'm losing money over time because of negative interest rates. And I'll take that and I'll just buy housing with it. Like, it's happening right in front of our faces. Nobody reports on it, right? Nobody really talks about it. Better dwelling is literally the only place I've seen that's actually even talked about it meaningfully, you know, in a direct way, and not like a side blinding sort of a way or a sidewinder sort of a way. And so and so the populace is totally falling for this grift, especially like the far right. The far right is completely falling for this. Like, their literal solution is expel all of the immigrants and buy more houses for rich people. That's literally their solution. And it's going to fail. Like, it obviously fails for the obvious reasons, right? The rich will just continue buying up the housing market. Jamie LeBoeuf is like, by the way, my name is not Jamie, I'm Paul. Jamie LeBoeuf means I like food. You know what, man? I like food too. Oh, it's like j'aime. Yeah, j'aime le boeuf. It's, yeah, of course. No, of course. I should have put that together, mate. Like, I know French. I speak French good. Je m'appelle John. AK writes, without the mass level of immigration, there wouldn't be a housing crisis. Yes, there would be. Without the insanely massive COVID reliefs, there would be no hyperinflation. That's a little bit more complex, but you're not completely incorrect on that one. Without the removal of the Keystone X pipeline, there would be no soaring gas prices. Again, like, that's just one situation. The gas prices would have gone up anyway. The gas prices are always going to go up, like, because gas is a limited resource, right? It's a non-renewable resource. We've already hit peak oil. This is what people don't understand about what's going on with the oil market and why the prices are not ever coming back down. Like, they're never coming back down, dude. Ever. In 500 years, until literally the last squeezing drop of oil is squeezed out, prices of oil will only ever go up. They will never, ever come back down. Because we've already hit peak oil. We're already there and we're already coming down. Like, it's already happening. So oil can only go up, right? And so the Keystone XL pipeline is not a, like, they tell you that prices would go down, but they wouldn't, right? That's just what they're telling you to get their support. It really pays to remember that you're really dealing with grifters, right? You're dealing with people who are grifters, who everything they say is a grift. Oh no, now I've got a bunch of people in here being like, oh, what do you think of French things? Oh, I'm not actually French, guys. I don't actually know that much about France or Quebec for that reason. I'm sympathetic to France, or to Quebec, certainly. Everything is more expensive because the policies of the left. I mean, that's an odd thing to say, right? Like, who's the left? Certainly not Justin Trudeau. Like, Justin Trudeau is a moderate right-wing like 60 years ago, he would have been considered a red Tory, right? 70 years ago, right? He would have been considered a red Tory. He would have been in the Conservative Party. Like this idea that the left even exists in politics is sort of an odd thing to think. I don't see any leftists. I see a bunch of like well-meaning sort of like, oh, we should be able to do something, right? Can't we, guys? Let's negotiate with the system of capital, and steadily realize that you can't really negotiate with the system of capital for these things. It's not actually how anything works. Right, so this idea that what's happening is because of the policies of the left. Like, what are you talking about? Even like, I don't really understand your point. It's not really cohesive. Like, is it the problems of capitalism? Yeah, like, so the left capital, sure, but if the solution is just do right wing capitalism, it's not going to work because the problem is capitalism. The issue is the issues of capitalism, and that capitalism doesn't actually meaningfully solve problems, right? That's not what the system of capital is about. The system of capital is about expansion and exploitation for the benefit of the ownership class. That's what capitalism is about. And so if your critique of the situation is Trudeau bad, like I have a pretty hard line for you to run into, a hard wall for you to run into, which is that Trudeau is doing the bidding of the people you want to sell the country to, right? That your solution is, let's go to the right, let's vote in the Conservatives, let's get rid of this Trudeau guy, rah, 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 or whatever. Well, who do you think Trudeau works for? Like, they're allies. They work together. Like, that's it. If there is a difference between the two of them, it's that Justin Trudeau and his group are willing to turn to disenfranchised minority groups, tilt their head ever so slightly to the right, and go, oh, and that's it. Like, that's it. In terms of economics, in terms of their economic policies, in terms of their ideas for the future, in terms of all of this kind of stuff, they're allies. They work together, right? And incidentally, this flows pretty neatly into what's my position on Macron. He's the same. He works for the system of capital, and he works for the interests of capital. And he's not going to work for the interests of the French people, hence the fucking revolutionary energy that's going on underneath his feet. Like, he's not actually interested in helping people, right? If he was, there wouldn't be riots in the street. There wouldn't be these mass strikes, right? So all these guys work for the interests of the capitalist system, and which is why the system of capital is widely failing, and why why it has fallen into this recession, and why it's falling behind, and why it's being pushed back, right? Is because you have this system of capital that's constantly trying to project this image of progressivism that's actually an extremely regressive force, right? Like, it's just all it's done recently in the last 20, maybe 30 years is wave a little gay pride flag being like, diversity, we're all in this together, right? And if that's the only thing that you think politics is, then you think we've become very progressive. But if you actually think politics is about how much food you have and how much time you have to enjoy the life that you have, right, then we've regressed significantly. So it's no, it's to say that it's the left. Trudeau's policies are anything but right wing. They are right wing policies, my man. The problem with capitalism is liberalism. I mean, oh my goodness. So we just got another demented person in the chat. Capitalism has dramatically reduced poverty rates. What a joke. What a total joke. Just demented. Like dementia. Straight up, I worry about your ability to look at the world. For real. Like, I worry about your ability to look at the world if you're saying that kind of thing. Like, do you have people in your life who keep saying, like, okay, Dad, whatever you say, like, capitalism, when did capitalism reduce poverty rates? Did it reduce poverty rates when it committed when it forced feudal serfs off of their own land into factories? Was that a reduction in poverty rates? Was there a reduction in poverty rates when they colonized Africa and created the black slave trade? into America and Europe? Was it did it reduce poverty rates while it committed the genocide against First Nations people? Was it reducing poverty during the 100 Years of Humiliation, where it helped British, where the Americans, the British, and the Japanese spread poverty all throughout China for 100 years? Like, when did it reduce poverty rates? Right? It's statistics, man. Oh, okay. Poverty was over 50% before the Industrial Revolution. It stands at 8%. I mean, if you just redefine what poverty means, I guess you can make this claim. Yeah, like the 90% reduction in poverty rates was due to the socialist countries like USSR, China, and Vietnam. Right? Right? Like, it's what a joke. Like, it's just a joke. Like, it's just this sad little joke where, like, capitalists just want to ignore all the war and the genocide and the exploitation of the working class. They just want to ignore it, right? Like, they don't they want to ignore that the poverty reduction has actually happened in socialist and communist nations. They want to actually ignore all of that, and then they tell you to read a book, and it's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's the most. See, like this kind of thing. How did Vietnam and the USSR contribute to global reduction in poverty? What are you talking about, bud? Like, what are you talking about? You're literally standing in front of us with this arrogant, holier-than-thou attitude, pretending like you know things when you're the dumbest person in the room. And if you want us to explain it, then you better just listen. Like, you better just listen. The USSR went from literally being a feudal economy run by czars, where everyone was peasants, to being an industrial superpower in a single generation. They were the first people into space. They built an economy and a culture that was so strong that they were able to defend themselves against the largest army the capitalists could field in the Nazis. And they defeated them. What, you think the Nazis are reducing global poverty? Like, you think the Americans have reduced global poverty? Like, what are you even talking about? Like, it just sounds to me like you're listening to what Daddy has to say and then just going, Daddy's right. Daddy wouldn't lie. And it's just getting embarrassing. Yeah, speaking of embarrassing, people starved to death because of the policy that the USSR did. You don't know anything. Like, this is just some high-level illiteracy, man. Like, just some high-level daddy said so talking. Like, it's really, like, you're not talking to daddy right now. You're talking to someone who knows more than you do by a lot, by a significant amount. You understand? Like, you're literally standing here saying that capitalism is responsible for the reduction of global poverty. It's an embarrassing thing to say. Shockingly embarrassing. And then you're standing up and saying the propaganda that your daddy told you and expecting to be taken seriously and respected for it. Like, stop it. You sound very dumb. Stop it. Like, it's straight up easily falsifiable. Nobody believes it, except guess who? Far-right fascists. And who are the ones that are actually spreading that propaganda around? Oh, is it the far-right fascists? I wonder if far-right fascists are liars. That far-right fascists have never in the history of mankind ever told any lie to anyone ever. We shouldn't take a look at the claims of far-right fascists ever. We should never take a look at what these far-right fascists have to say with a grain of salt and think, is that accurate? Is that actually true? No, we should just take them at face value. Nothing bad has ever happened in human history ever. No negative thing has ever happened because we just listened to what far-right fascists had to say and just said, yeah, okay, that seems correct. Yeah, maybe we should actually double-check these claims. Maybe we should actually look and see if there's evidence or facts to support anything that these far-right fascist liars have to say. And guess what always happens every single time we do? Oh, they're liars. Oh shit, the liars are lying again, like they have always lied. Constantly. over and 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 over again. Like, if they are talking, they are lying. Maybe check in on that. And then stop coming in here and spreading these bullshit propaganda lies around, wasting everybody's time and making yourself look like a dimwit. Like, it's annoying. It's embarrassing. It's frustrating that I constantly have to reiterate the same shit again. So let's take a look at your fun little claim here. But people starved because of the policies of the USSR. Well, okay. What policies? When? Where? What paper can I look at? What academic should I listen to? Who's got the claim? Where's it coming from? Because you know who actually made that claim initially? The Nazis. Yeah, it was the Nazis that came out with that claim. That the famine that happened in Ukraine and other parts of Russia was the fault of the USSR. And in fact, it's an intentional genocide. They intended to do it and completely 100%, even though nobody talked about it and there's no evidence whatsoever to support that claim. Like, we're literally watching a genocide happen in Gaza right now. Like, we're watching it. It's being filmed, right? That's a genocide. And how do we know? Because the leadership of Israel has confessed to it. They're literally publishing articles in their press talking about why genocide is important and why they should be doing a genocide, right? Netanyahu has said so. Benny has said so. Literally high-level leadership. They're releasing documents. I literally can show you the documents where they're planning the genocide against the Gazans, right? But what happened in the Holodomor was a genocide because we said so. Well, because the Nazis said so. For sure. For sure. Guys, you're going to love this quote. Bex, good to see you. Guys, you're just going to love this quote. This is great. From AK. Oh my goodness. Stalin was an evil man. I'm pretty sure he killed his son or something like that. He was surely an evil man? Question mark at the end of that. Like, AK, man, I really feel like what's happening right now. Okay? I'm going to soften my tone a little bit. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to soften my tone a little bit here. I think that you are surrounded by Nazis. I think that the people you are listening to, the people who you are allowing in your ear, okay, are whispering Nazi lies into your ear. Why they're doing that, that's their business, right? But I think the people who you're tuning into, and I think the people you're listening to, are either themselves Nazis or are just in the thrall of a Nazi system because they don't care to fight back against it. That the things you say are the things that the Nazis said. And it's annoying. But my encouragement to you, and what I hope you'll actually take seriously, is whoever is telling you these things, stop listening to them. Find other sources. Challenge those sources. Challenge those positions. Meaningfully challenge those positions coming from these people, because they are lying to you. They are lying to you in big, enormous, aggressive ways. Serious and significant ways. That's my advice to you. Because it sounds to me like you feel really certain about things that are comically false. Like, you might as well be in here telling me that an angel lives with you. Like, you might as well be in here telling me that the Lord Xenu has infected your body with thetans. Like, comically false. And I really am at a point in my life. Really, I'm at a point in my life where I am no longer interested in taking silly people seriously. I'm going to spend exactly zero amount of time treating these people with seriousness. They are cartoonish people. They are cartoonishly stupid. And I'm going to treat them that way because I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of the discourse, including illiterate Luddites, just dead-brained morons who refuse to step to the plate and actually read something or know something. And it's so annoying that the discourse is so cluttered by these overwhelming morons whose only actual point when you actually talk to them in a discourse is to go, nuh-uh, tough shit, yaha, dumbasses. If there isn't a source, and a source is not, so here, now you're asking the right questions, AK. Well, what book should you read? I mean, you could start with the Communist Manifesto. There's a good start to give you an idea of what communism actually is. But a really good jumping off point, just to know more, right? Just to know more, would be Michael Parenti's Black Shirts in Red. That's a very easy consumable book, something that is easy to get into, right? Like, yeah, Das Kapital, like, sure, like the big fucking read, sure, but we can do better, right? Richard Wolff has released a like Socialism for Dummies text. Richard Wolff, that's Wolf with 2 F's. Michael Parenti's Yellow Lecture is notorious, right? But most like you can find a ton of lectures by Michael Parenti online. You can find a bunch of lectures given by Richard Wolff with 2 F's. He's got a lot of really good lectures. Those are good places to start, because the truth is that telling somebody, oh, just read Marx, like, oof, dense and difficult stuff. What do you think about Che Guevara? Baller. Freed his people. I don't know how to pronounce your name, my man, so I'm just going to call you Gan? Lat? What? Hello to you, friend. What are your thoughts on the theory that says far right and far left are the same ideology? Nazis are invested in the demonization of communism and are completely willing to use themselves as an icon to terrorize centrists away from communism. Because they don't need people to become Nazis. They need people to not become communists. So what Nazis do is they promulgate this ideology and this idea into the society that communists are just as bad as Nazis. So that renders people in a place of stupefaction. They become stupid. They become unable to participate meaningfully in the system of politics as the Nazis drive the action, right? They just don't need people to fight back. So if they can convince you, oh, don't join up with our antagonists, don't join up with the people who are actually opposed to us in a meaningful way and will do serious things to us, right? Just stay home. We're all the same anyway, right? We're all the same anyway. So just remain terrified in your house, right? Yeah, obviously Nazis are terrifying. We're like, Nazis kick in doors and do all kinds of stuff, but the communists are the exact same. They'll do the same thing, ignoring the fact that, yeah, communists will kick in the doors of Nazis, for sure. Communists have a long history of kicking in Nazis' doors and causing problems for Nazis, for sure, right? So this is a theory. It's an argument that comes out of the far right that leverages the terror of the far right in order to terrorize the public into remaining complicit and compliant so that they don't actually swing to the left and become communists and actually stand up against the Nazis. That's what it's for, and it's being very successful. It's a very successful argument because people are looking for excuses to not actually fight back. But if you were to zoom it out past that and say, okay, are the far right and the far left the same ideology? It's just embarrassing. Like once we go past the gut, and actually look at it from an academic standpoint, right? It's an embarrassing argument to make. And the people who make it discredit themselves intellectually for having made it. Like, if a person is literally going to stand in front of you and say that the far right and the far left are the same, they're basically confessing their stupidity. If not their stupidity, certainly their willingness to make claims while being illiterate, right? Like, the far right has statements in it like we should purge the society of lesser ethnic races. They have ideas like white supremacy. They have ideas like the Ubermensch. They have ideas like that there's a great man that we should all fall at the feet of, and all this kind of stuff. Whereas the far left is like, collective action is good. We should help the poor. We should house everybody. We should make sure that people's labor is that people get the full rewards of their own labor, right? Like, to compare these two ideologies is to essentially just say, well, at one point both sides shot a gun ever, so they're the same. It's just to remove intellectual discourse from the conversation and pretend as though two opposing worldviews have parity at all, right? Like, it's pretty wild. It's a pretty wild claim to make, and it's made for a reason. Like, the people who make the claim are attempting to terrorize people into complacency and don't actually investigate the one thing that is against it. Richard Wolff supports China? Yeah. Any good communist should. Like, China is at a real interesting moment. China's in a really interesting moment, but and it could go south. It could, for sure. But they've essentially been following through on Marxist principles. They've essentially been following through on a Marxist idea and a Marxist doctrine. They have had to follow a policy and a principle of appeasement because America exists. But John, I think people think the far left is light. I don't know if I understand what you're talking about, Cotton. Is light. I watch Trump speak all the... Oh, well, Donald Trump. Yeah, communists are also invested in the demonization of the right. Yeah, like the Nazis, my man. Like, come on, bud. Like, are we going to get into some Nazi apologetics here? Is that where this is going to go? I'm going to let you know. Pretty black and white. I don't let Nazis onto this chat. Like, if you start doing Nazi apologencia, you can get the fuck out of here. Pretty clearly. Like, the far right includes Nazis. Yeah, we're going to demonize Nazis. Yep. And if you think we shouldn't, then I'm going to ban you. I watch Trump speak all the time. Well, there's your problem right there, my man. And I can confidently tell you that your perspective on the right is fictional. Donald Trump literally passed a Muslim ban, you dumb fuck. Like, he literally passed a Muslim ban. Like, Jesus Christ, my man. God, these people are cartoons. Marxist principles include totalitarianism. Like, what is that? What are you talking about, Ed? Totalitarianism. What are you talking about? Like, people just like to use these words, but I don't actually think you know what it is, what you're talking about. Right? Like, so what is it? What's totalitarianism? It's like authoritarian, right? Authoritarian is just a word that gets thrown in. I don't think it means anything. Oh, Ed Harris, go back to acting. The Nazis came from the left, not the right. They are socialist. That's dumb. It's just a dumb thing to say, my man. And you got to stop saying it. Because the only people who are going to agree with you are other dummies. The Nazis are a far-right ideology, right? They have the word socialist in their title. Oh, so it turns out that genocidal mass murderers also end up being liars. They never stood for socialist principles. They never stood. Literally, the first the first concentration camps were communist. Read any of the writings of Adolf Hitler. He's outspoken against socialists. He's outspoken against communism. Like this is an embarrassing position. It's an embarrassing position to hold. Yeah, baby oil is made of babies. Like, come on. Come on. I cannot believe that this talking point has taken hold. It is an indictment of our society that this talking point has taken hold because it's so stupid. It's such a stupid thing to say, and it's such a stupid thing to believe. It's no serious academic holds on to this idea. You can read William Shire's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. It's right there. Look it up. It's in the name. It's like the dumbest thing to believe. Like, for real. Like, you are the dumbest person in the chat. By a lot. You understand? Like, by a significant amount. Like the best thing for you to do right now is to just admit your illiteracy, admit that you don't know anything about the subject, admit your cluelessness, admit that you're gullible, right? Admitting your gullibility is a big one, because all it takes is someone to say, like, I'm a good man, and you go, he said he's a good man. That's all it takes. Hey, he shook my hand and looked me in the eye and said that he liked me, and so I believe him, because he said so. Like, maybe, crazy thought, just maybe, he's a fucking liar. You ever think about that? No intellectual anywhere. Find me the Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, Berkeley, MIT academic that will back up this claim and actually make this argument that the Nazis were socialist. It's just some Charlie Kirk embarrassing bullshit that gets thrown out there to sucker gullible people. So we have to have this stupid conversation. Like, read a book. Read any book. Read Mein Kampf. Read literally any book. Literally any book. Like, it's such an easy to falsify claim that to stand up and actually make the claim in front of literally anybody just tells me that you don't know the first thing about fucking anything. Like, holy cow, man. You're not just in the basement. You've dug a hole and you've covered yourself over. Like, you're in the basement of the basement. You're like playing cards with Lucifer, being like, I'm on the right side of this. Middle Eastern Americans are majority in support of Trump. I mean, if the choice is between Muslim ban or genocide, right? It's not a really great argument. Like, and you're not going to hear me defend the Democrats ever. I think the Democrats and the Republicans are allies, that they work together to achieve goals collectively on behalf of capitalists. And they're doing a great job of it. Commit a genocide, do a Muslim ban. We'll pick between the lesser of two evils. I guess Muslim ban is better than genocide. So it's not much of an argument. Was Stalin a communist? Yep. He led a communist society, for sure, a society that was pursuing communism. Did he murder? Sure, he killed a lot of Nazis. Tons of Nazis. Lots of Tsarists, right? There was lots of civil uprisings, for sure. Right? Like, as long as you're willing to grieve for Nazis, then I guess he's a bad guy, right? And Mao fought a war against imperialists, right? He fought back against the 100 years of humiliation. So yeah, he killed a lot of guys, right? He killed a lot of Japanese imperialists, killed a lot of landlords, killed a lot of American imperialists and British imperialists, right? Was Stalin a communist? Yeah. Like, he certainly was the leader of a communist society, and the people of that society supported him on this pursuit of the path of communism. He wrote about communism. He's one of the prolific writers of communism, and you got to read his work and you got to know about it. You don't necessarily need to agree with his perspectives, but to make the claim that Stalin was not at least attempting to be a communist I think is wrongheaded. And I don't get into this argument of Trotsky versus Stalin. It's just not interesting. Was Mussolini a communist? What a fucking joke. No. Mussolini was not a communist. He wrote very, very loudly against communism and wrote very loudly against socialism and wrote in favor of his own ideology, which he created, called fascism. Right? Mussolini is like the creator of fascism. Like the progenitor of fascism. It's such a weird question to ask. That it was Mussolini, the founder of fascism, the person who wrote loudly and broadly against communism, a communist? Like, no, bro. Like, bruh. Here we're teeing it up. Here we go, guys. What's the next comment? But Mussolini was part of a workers' team socialist. Yeah, and correct. Genocide is 1,000 times worse than a mere travel ban from terror countries. I mean, yeah. I mean, but so what about, like... I don't know, dude. Like, now it's like, it's weird. You're acting like an apologist, being like, my guy's better because he's only banning Muslims. You know, like this, Caitlin Johnstone made a really good point, which is this lesser of two evils argument makes everybody a demon. And that's really what's happening. Like, everybody's just turning into a total fucking demon. Because the lesser of two evils is like between Beelzebub and Lucifer, right? Like, you got to choose between Mephisto or the Dark Lord of Terror, Diablo. Like, it's just brutal. Did about the Poles, Ukrainians, care to be more specific? Like, all of Polish history or all of Ukrainian history? Like, did what? Yeah, thanks, June. June jumping in here, asking the big questions. Did what? How many people did Stalin murder? I don't have a number. You like, anybody who's tried to count realizes, like, oh, these are all Nazis. It's like my favorite when it's like the Black Book of Communism, who the authors literally repudiated their own findings because they realized it was like, oh, these are all just like Nazis and people who died of natural causes. Like, right, he was a socialist. Ed, man, are you having a stroke? Like, I feel like there's like, you're having like a conniption over there. Like, do you have a point? Like, every single... Mussolini was the founder of fascism. Ed, are you okay? Like, I feel like you're actually having a stroke. Mussolini is literally the founder of the fascist party, who creates the ideology of fascism. And from there, the ideology of fascism is adopted by other world leaders, including Adolf Hitler. Like, this attempt to shoehorn Mussolini in as the founder of socialism is sad. It's sad. Like, it's weird. There's no evidence to support this claim. It's a weird claim to make. And it's especially weird because the founder of the concept of socialism is actually Karl Marx. Right? Or, if not the founder, certainly like the popularizing figure. So this weird claim that you're making, no, Mussolini was smart enough to understand that he could make more money and get more power by siding with industrialists. Like, my man, Ed, it's time for you to stop talking. Like, it's so obvious that you don't know anything about the subject. Like, really, really, really. It is really time for you to stop making statements and start asking questions. Because, like, my man, this is getting really, really embarrassing. Like, really, really embarrassing. On a very, very low level. Like, 1 + 1 = 2 kind of stuff. Like, you're literally standing there saying 1 + 1 = potato. Like, I worry about your mental health in this conversation that we're having. Like, what's going on with you? who are you listening to? That this is where you're coming from. Because it's like completely inverted, total fraudulent bullshit that is, funnily enough, completely easy to falsify. Like, Wikipedia knowledge will falsify these claims. You don't need to go any deeper. And it's just weird. Like, it's weird that you think the world is inverted in the way that it is. That, like, not even capitalists are thinking this way. Not like you throughout the 80s and the 90s, like, it was just understood. Like, Mussolini and Hitler, these are fascists. Like, they're fascists. Nobody was willing to stand up and tell these lies. Nobody was willing to stand up and lie about this. We're going to put you in timeout for 24 hours, Ed. You're free to come back when you want to be polite. Goodbye. We don't need to fill the chat with your dumb shit. You're obviously illiterate. You obviously don't know what's going on. You're obviously espousing some religious doctrine into my chat, and moreover, you're not listening to anybody. So I have no reason to respond to you any longer. You're free to come back another day when you want to be polite. Iran is literally a terror country. Oh man, the dumb fucks are out in force today, man. So here's Iran, right? Did something happen in Iraq in the last 20 years? Did something happen in Afghanistan in the last 20 years? Did something happen in Syria in the last 20 years? Did something happen in Georgia? Has something happened in Oman? Something happened in Pakistan? Oh, what about Turkmenistan? Did anything happen over the last 20 years that maybe has Iran with its hackles up a little bit? What possibly could have happened over the last 20 years that has Iran thinking to itself, oh boy, we've got to tighten up. We've really got to tighten our forces up and actually struggle against a force that's coming up. What could it possibly be? Oh, wait, I have an idea. Maybe the wholesale destruction of Iraq with the war on terror, the invasion of Iran and the 20-year war that the Americans recently pushed out of, the destabilization constantly by the CIA in Pakistan. Oh yeah, the Syrian war that occurred over here. Oh yeah, the coups that the Americans did in Georgia, forcing Putin to respond. Oh hey, wait a minute, is that? I think that's the Iranian border right there. So America invades here, it invades here, it invades here, it invades here, and your complaint is that Iran is fighting back. What's Iran done? Come on, AK. You're the smart guy. You're the smart guy in the room, right? You're certainly not the dumbest person in the room. What's Iran done? Come on. America literally murdered 1 million people right over here. I can show you an article about how the CIA was walking through the streets of Kabul just shooting people. Right? It's terrorizing its own people at a scale no other country does. And its neighbors. They fund terror. These are nothing statements. I can say this about you. AK funds terror. He's terrorizing everybody on a scale no one has ever seen. AK is the terrorist. He's terrorizing everybody. Iran kills its own people. Source required. Source required. These aren't really claims. This is just staying stuff. Source required. Give me the paper. Give me the title of the academic paper. Oh, bro, you're from Iran. Oh, now it's bro, I'm from Iran. Because nobody on the internet can ever say anything, right? Oh, you're from Iran, and yet you can talk to a Canadian about how Iranians get terrorized. Big terror state, Iran, where they allow people to just talk to people in Canada about the terror level. Yeah, huge terror state. Very believable, AK. Very believable. So you should know then. No, we're not the one making the claim. You're the one making the claim. If you're going to make a claim, I need to see a source. I'm not just going to trust you, bro. Like, what source should I look at? Because here's what I know about Iran, okay? This is as far as I'm willing to go with Iran, all right? Iran is surrounded by total wasteland destruction, right? Iraq has essentially been broken into two, maybe even three components, thanks to the war on terror, right? Million people died in Iraq thanks to that invasion. Hey, that's the Iraqi border right there. Do you think that would be a good thing to happen to Iran? Do you think it would be good if the Americans came in there and broke Iran apart the way that they broke Iraq apart? Because if you do, you're a fucking little Nazi, right? That's an objectively bad thing to wish for any people, that a foreign power comes in and destroys the country, okay? The Iranian leadership is concerned for it. And not only are they concerned because they went into Iraq and blew it up, they also did the same thing in Afghanistan. So they've done like a little terror sandwich to Iran. And what has that created in Iran? What does that create in Iran? Well, that creates a scared populace who wants leadership, who is willing to fight, like not stand up and say this is bad, but pick up weapons and shoot guns and defend the culture. Well, who in an Islamic society is going to stand up with guns and defend the culture? Well, that's going to be militant theocrats. By definition. Oh, so you are arguing that someone comes in there and destroys the country. Like, that's the argument that you're actually making, that America comes in there and intervenes and destroys the country. That's your argument? Whoa. Like, no one is going to make the argument that what is happening in Iran is like the greatest thing ever. No one's going to make the argument that what is happening in Iran is the stopping point. Iran did it. Iran, standing as a diamond on the hill, is the society for all of us to reach up and adhere to. No one's going to make that argument. But the argument that is being made is that it is preferable for the people of Iran and for the Iranian society to not experience a collapse because of foreign devastation and destruction. That it is preferable for Iran to maintain its integrity as a nation than it is to fall to foreign powers and fall prey to foreign powers. That if you actually cared about the future of Iran, if you actually gave a fuck about the future of Iran, you should be speaking out against Western capital with the full-throatedness of the full power of your voice. Because what is empowering far-right theocrats and militant theocrats in Iran is terror and fear from America. Like, does the leadership of Iran rule with an iron fist? Yeah. It's a war. Like, I don't know what world you're living in, my man. I don't know what little bubble you get to live in, where you get to actually, like, ignore the devastation that exists in the countries beside you. Like, what little weird little garden community do you live in? Like, I'm sure that it must be frustrating to live in a place that is under siege and in a war. Who's driving the war? It's not Iran. It's not Iran by a long shot. If you want the far-right militants and the far-right theocrats out of power in Iran, then you need to get rid of the people who are driving like, I don't know why you're so, like, I don't know why you suck American cock so much, AK. Like, I don't get it. Like, if you're Iranian, I just don't know why you're constantly glucking American cock. Like, Russia? Like, what are you talking about? Russia? Russia hasn't been in the region since the 80s. Like, what are you talking about? Like, maybe you could talk about the proxy situation in Syria, but it's not like Russia sent troops or anything. Like, American has boots on the ground in Iraq. Like, and you're just sitting there, glok, 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 glok. America, greatest country in the world. Your perspective is strange, dude. Like, it is a strange, unusual, perverse little position that you have. That you think that the country that destroyed the countries surrounding Iran should come into Iran and also destroy it. Creepy position. Everything Iran has is Russian? Yeah, because Iran will trade with Russia. So? Like, I just don't get your position, dude. Like your position literally is that America should go into Iran and destroy it. And that'll be good for it. Just creepy, man. Yeah, I think I'm good. I think we're just going to move on. Because, Jesus Christ. Just this unhinged, detached worldview. Yeah. Okay, bud. Like, Jesus Christ. Certainly has absolutely nothing. You're just not hearing it, eh? You're just not. Here, type this in. Can you type this in, AK, so that I can understand that you're competent and that you're actually, like, capable of hearing? America invaded Iraq and destroyed the country and murdered 1 million people. America invaded Afghanistan and murdered a bunch of people in Afghanistan. Can you type that in and actually say that out loud so that you understand that that's happening in the world around you? Like, because you sound delusional. Like, you just sound like kind of a raving lunatic. Yeah, AK, I'm not going to respond to you until you type that out. Because I just think you're demented. Like I believe in angels, kind of dementia. Here's a thing I'd prefer to talk about. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, hit the bells, hit the whistles. Is Kim Jong-un fascist? No. Kim Jong-un actually is following a line of communist thought called Juche. Let's contextualize what's happening in Korea, okay? Because Americans love to do this thing where they love to do what AK does, which is ignore the reality of the situation and ignore the facts, right? And if you just ignore the facts and you ignore the reality, like if history begins today and there's no history and evidence doesn't matter and there's no facts or reality like AK believes, then you can say whatever you like, basically, which is what happens. So there's a situation that occurs called the Korean War. That American made a show about it called MASH, where we all felt bad about this war that we had, but then did nothing to actually stop it. Korea used to be its own thing, right? Korea. And then the Americans, with the help of the Japanese, of course, their imperial partners, launched a war against Korea, while simultaneously launching a war against Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, staunching trade against China. And this is all done to staunch the spread of communism, right? It was very open. There wasn't any secrets about it. So the Americans took over South Korea, right? They laid waste to North Korea. They rubbleized it. They turned it into rubble, right? They destroyed it, there wasn't a standing structure in North Korea. They murdered 20% of the populace there. Complete devastation, right? Complete devastation in North Korea. The North Koreans held the line, fought back against American imperialism, and as this war in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia died down, so too did the Korean War. As far as the Koreans are concerned, this war persists and carries on, right? That the Americans were willing to invest in Seoul right? They were willing to invest in Daegu. They were willing to turn this into a capitalist, like, oh, look how big and tall and glittering all the buildings are. But you watch a movie like Parasite that comes out of South Korea, and you see that there is a kind of a dark heart to the underbelly of capitalism in South Korea. And that South Korea is actually kind of a weird little place, right? The North Koreans are following a communist line. The leadership of North Korea is well respected in Korea, and it's well respected for good reason. They are the people who rebuilt North Korea and have managed to hold the line against Western aggression on its borders. A big reason why all the Uns, Kim Jong-un, Kim Il-jung, all the Kims, all of them, the reason why they stand up and saber rattle the nukes, right, is because they're afraid the Americans are going to fucking come in here and blow the place up, like they did recently. And the thing that I find that happens in this conversation, right, Japan is so peaceful, colorful, and technological country with no poverty and less unequal than the United States. In Japan, most people are at a similar level of social status. Literally Japan, the history of Japan is that it's an imperial power. Like, straight up pre-World War II, these guys were, like, committing genocides in China. Like, this was a bloodthirsty genocidal nation that was a terror of this whole area, and gets subjugated to America as a vassal state through nuclear bombardment. The only reason why Japan is in the state that it is now is because the government has needed to stabilize stabilize itself, and it's done so through a policy of total capitulation and total vassalization to America. The standard of living that exists in Japan exists because there's government controls. It exists because there's just a general culture that exists in Japan that says, yeah, we should probably have a stable economy, and we should probably be a stable place. But you have a culture that's still reeling and still trying to figure itself out from being just these genocidal, bloodthirsty maniacs. And one of the ways that it's trying to do that is by being cute. That's it. Just be a cute place that makes cool, cute stuff. And yeah, Mario. Ha-ha. Hee-hee. Ha! Right? Forget all about that last shit that we were doing not that long ago. Forget about the fact that we got nuked twice. Forget about all that. Yeah, waifus. Right? Like, and I'm not trying to say that what that is evil or illegitimate, but it is what it is. Right? That Japan, like, to be living in Japan is to be living in a culture that is in this kind of perpetual state of reinvention. And it's not going to happen if it's destabilized through these free market capitalist ideas, right? So it's. Oh, dude, please don't jerk off the Japanese in my chat, man. Like there's this Western fetishization of the Japanese. It's just very, very weird. It's just very weird. This sort of this fetishization of the Japanese and the Japanese culture that goes on. Like, they're making cool anime, right? They're making cool art. Like, Mario is not illegitimate, right? And sure, there are people who are trying to figure themselves out, right? There are people who are trying to figure themselves out and trying to live in a world as a demilitarized vassal power, right? That's the truth. Like, Japan has no real power. Right? Like, what's Japan's power? What's it going to do? Right? Like, what really? It exists as a vassal state of the United States. And believe me, I'm well aware of this as a Canadian who is also a vassal country of the United States. The best strategy when you have been vassalized by a power and you don't want to experience any negative consequences from that vassal, from that overlord, right, is to be nice. Is to play nice. Make a bunch of nice stuff, right? Make a bunch of cool shit that they want to buy, right? Dragon Ball Z, check it out. Is that nice, Sailor Moon? Buy all our merch, right? Like, and I don't think no, of course. Like, it's a good argument to say that we should create cultural societies and allow societies to make as much art as possible, right? Like Pokemon, for God's sakes. Like, there's so much shit that's coming out of there, right? And it's clear that they've dedicated a good portion of their society to do it on purpose, right? It's clear that they're doing that, but like, it's like it's a strategy. Like, it's a strategy. So are they making cute stuff for image? Of course they are. Like, I'm sorry, guys. Like, of course they are. Like, of course they are. Like, what are you, crazy? What, you don't think that anybody in the ruling class of Japan ever sits down and ever talks about this stuff ever? You think everybody's just doing stuff all the time? It's just, this is the font of human capacity. Like, no. No, man. Never in human history has that ever been the case. Never, ever, ever in human history has that ever been the case. It has always been the case that art and culture is tightly controlled by the ruling class, always. Like, for God's sakes, do you know why William Shakespeare stopped producing plays? Because the theater was banned. Like, this idea that all of the art and everything that's just coming out of Japan is just happening because it's just a free market. No, you can make what you like, and the world is a free and beautiful place. Oh my goodness, lobbity la. Jesus Christ, I thought it was the hippies that were supposed to be hippy dippy. Like, obviously the power structure looks at the art that's being produced, and obviously it says, this can go and this cannot. Like, obviously there are controls that obviously happen in every culture that's ever existed, and that should be obvious. Like, that should be obvious. Well, you think if some artist starts coming out of Tokyo that's literally like, we should dismantle Japan, we should sell Sapporo to the North Koreans, here's my artistic art piece that I'm going to spread internationally. Well, you think the Japanese authorities are just going to be like, yeah, that's fine. Sure. Like, probably not, bro. They're certainly not going to help him. They're certainly not going to fund him. Like, I just think that there's like a sort of naivety about that perspective that I just don't think I can take that seriously. The other day, I heard a comment saying that socialism co-ops all sorts and source of creativity and innovation. Like, if Japan was not capitalist, all things they invented wouldn't exist. No, I think that's silly. I think that art is just humans. You can't stop them. You can't. Like, that art exists in spite of whatever system. And capitalist, communist, I don't care. You want to get talking about art? The flaw of capitalist art is that there's a bottleneck that happens. That's the real problem with art in a capitalist system. Is that there is an economic bottleneck. That it's not as cut and dry as, like, put the art in front of me, yay, nay, right? But, like, capitalists are not going to go out of their way to fund art that is explicitly anti-capitalist, right? And art needs wealth to be created. It needs wealth to be distributed, at the very least. And capitalists are just not going to fund and distribute anti-capitalist art. They're just not going to do that. And so there's a bottlenecking that happens in the society, and it's structural, right? And any society is going to have some kind of bottlenecking, but the goal, right? That I make the argument that the worst kind of bottlenecking is the economic kind. Right? Because it just throttles the whole enterprise entirely. There's just no way that anybody can produce anything of any value whatsoever outside of kowtowing to the whims of this capitalist perspective. Well, I mean, Gan just wants to ignore the history of colonialism. Got it. Just ignore the colonies in Africa. Just ignore the war in the Middle East, right? Just ignore the colonies in Latin America, right? Like this sort of embarrassing pro-capitalist position that just wants to ignore all of human history, basically. Like the quote-unquote freedom and liberty that you enjoy in capitalism, like everything was built by slaves, right? The infrastructure of the United States was built by literal slaves, right? Like the colonies in Africa are where your resources come from. The colonies that existed in Latin America are where your resources came from. It's the same thing with the European nations. Oh, the European nations are the greatest. We're so rich and wealthy. Yeah, of course you are. You fucking hollowed out Africa. Like, obviously. Like it's so weird when people stand up with this sense of pride about this hollowing out of Africa. It's like listening to a train robber try to make the argument that the best way to run an economy is by robbing trains. Look how wealthy I am. Look, obviously train robbery is the best way to run a system. Look how wealthy I am. I robbed all these trains. And with that, and there's no consequences for that. No negative side of that. So as long as you just never take a look at the other side of the ledger, as long as you're just like, well, I'm fat and happy, right? I made a lot of money. But did you know that this view of capitalism is very evil, ingrained Marxism? Because if you think outside that philosophy, capitalism is a necessary step. Just the hits keep on coming. Just keep on coming. So, capitalism is not a necessary step, right? That the structure of capitalism doesn't need to happen. It doesn't need to go down that way. You don't need a society to go from feudal monarchy to capitalism to something else. You just don't need that. It's not a real thing, right? That the history of capitalism is the history of private interests, merchants and marketers, right, and manufacturers becoming more powerful than the crown. That's the history of the rise of capitalism. That you had a society. Because look, can you open up Google and pick an African country that's not in war? Can you pick an African country that's not experiencing a capitalist war, that's not experiencing colonialism, that's not experiencing any kind of infusion from... So can you just pick the one country that I want to have that's the one? Okay, South Africa. How about South Africa? No, I know. How about Libya? How about we do Libya? Google South Africa HDI. Why? Like, so we could have a big conversation about South African apartheid and how, like, Elon Musk, the richest American right now, is an apartheid baby. Is that what we can have a conversation about? Right? Or maybe we should talk about the total destruction of Libya on behalf of the capitalist class. Right? Maybe we should talk about the coups all throughout the country by the CIA. Maybe we should talk about the overthrow of all of these countries. Right? They're doing great, though. I will prove to you that capitalism plus social democracy will lead us to a better world. Okay, bud. So what am I supposed to do here? I'm supposed to go Google, like, I don't know what you want me to do. Let's follow this line. Let's see how persuasive you can be. Come on. So give me the step by step. I don't really understand what you're asking me to do. Let's do it. Let's see how persuasive this guy can get, you guys. Google the country followed by HDR. So first of all, I don't understand what HDI is. So South Africa HDR. So I bet you HDI is like a measurement used by the capitalists specifically to inflate the capitalist case. Right? HDI is an indication of the improvement of hyper density industrialism. And that's gone up, and so capitalism works. Oh, the Human Development Index. Okay. 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 Human Development Index. Gotcha. Oh, the measurements start right after the colonial period ended. Weird. Like, yeah, the line is going up, you see? The line's going up. So it works. Yeah, it works because because the jackboot that we keep on their back, we let them go up by 0.10%. Yeah, it's going up by 0.55%. Yeah, over 10 years. 0.55% over 10 years. South Africa goes up by 0.5% over 10 years. High development. Yep. We edged off on the jackboot by 0.5%, so over 10 years, they got 0.5% better. They did it. This is your argument, bud? This is it? Like, for real. This is like you, like, clapping because they're managing to develop with a jackboot on their neck. like, how about Libya? Which they literally went in and blew up. Like, straight up murdered Gaddafi on camera. Oh, but look, the line's going up. The line's going up, everybody. In spite of the capitalist jackboot, the line's going up. Proved it. We did it. And when's the measurement begin? 2010? Like... These capitalists, man. Enter the website. Okay, so let's get out of here. Enter what website? What are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? Is this the one? Is this what you want? Right here? This one? Like, no one's saying that there isn't some development. Like, you understand? Yeah, pick a capitalist country in Africa, but you're only allowed to pick a country which hasn't been completely devastated by capitalism. No, I think I understand the point he's trying to make, which is that there has been any amount of development, and so that's a success, right? Which is the oddest kind of position to make, right? Like, of course there's been development. That the system of capital actually relies on a certain degree of development. Right? You can go back and look at Adam Smith. We don't even need to get into Marxism for this, right? You can just go back and look at Adam Smith. Adam Smith understood that for capital to work, that you needed to have laborers actually do work to actually produce something that somebody would want to buy, so that you could take profit from that, right? So what do you see when you actually click on any of this? Well, here you go. Here's a degree of development that exists, right? Here's a degree of development that exists in these countries so that the capitalists can siphon away surplus value, right? So that the country can just siphon it away. So you need to have a certain degree of development. That is true. But the communist argument is that while that development is occurring, there's a great deal of exploitation that's going on. And that a lot of that development will regress, right? That you guys have heard me make that argument many times about what's the Scandinavian countries. Get a lot of the social democrat stands coming in here talking about social democracies and the success that exists in places like Finland or Scandinavia, right? Failing to recognize that the capitalists will regress those policies, that they're going to regress. Yeah, look, the West actually build roads to the mine pit and port to export the resources. Yeah, exactly, right? Development, right? That's development. The argument of communism is that the development would be higher, and it is. You take a look at a place like China, the development is higher by a lot. Like, and they keep raising the amount of development that they're expecting to see. The IMF does. And a lot of this development will just get regressed. Like, once that mine is empty, what, you think the African nations are keeping that wealth? All of that wealth gets exported, right? So they build a road to the mine and build some electrical grids, right? Maybe you get a school out there or something. And then once there's no wealth left to harvest from the state, from the place, the capitalists abandon it, right? And the place falls to squalor. Or, worst case scenario, they actually get a leader who actually wants to try to help the place, and they go in and they blow the place up, and look at the development then. Like, this is the inevitable outcome right here. Like, this pathetic, like, 0.10%, like, these little numbers, and this is like the capitalist success story. The capitalist success story that I'm supposed to really like go, oh my goodness, is that they're managing a level of development that like tribal societies would do. Oh wow, they're just as well developed as Gaulish states under the Roman Empire. Oh my god, floored, completely blown away, can't recover. Like, nations develop naturally regardless of their ism, right? If they live under capitalism, communism, okay, places just develop naturally because people do shit, right? Real straightforward, simple stuff. The system of capital attaches itself like a boil onto the side of these places and extracts wealth out of them, right? And if the big success story is that over a 10-year period, fucking Algeria had 0.3% development, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? Let's take a look at the big success story. This seems to be the big one, right? That is Algeria. Algeria. I'm the greatest. Algeria. Let's look at Algeria. Right? 0.3%. High human development. I don't know why it's green. Like, Egypt is actually higher in terms, and like this place is actually higher. All right, so Algeria. The People's Democratic Republic of Algeria, country in North Africa, right? Etymology, history, prehistoric and ancient history, Middle Ages, yabba yabba, lots to learn there. Early modern era, yabba yabba. French colonization. French colonization. Under the pretext of a slight to their consul, the French invaded and captured Algiers by 1830. That exists until 1962. Capitalist success story. From 1848 until independence, which 1962, France administered the whole Mediterranean region of Algeria as an integral part and département of nation. One of France's longest-held overseas territories, Algeria became a destination for hundreds of thousands of European immigrants, who became known as colons and later Pieds Noirs. Between 1825 and 1847, 50,000 French people emigrated to Algeria. These settlers benefited from the French government's confiscation of communal land from tribal people and the application of modern agricultural techniques that increased the amount of arable land. Many Europeans settled in Oran and Algiers, and by the early 20th century, they formed a majority of the population in both cities. So literally stole the land and had slaves work the farms. Capitalist success story, high development index. During the late 19th and early 20th century, the European share was almost a fifth of the population. The French government aimed at making Algeria an assimilated part of France, and this included substantial education investments, especially after the 1900s. Got to get rid of that barbarian culture. That's what we got to do. They're better off for it. The indigenous culture and religious resistance heavily opposed this tendency, but in contrast to the other colonized countries, paths in Asia and Caucasus, Algeria kept its individual skills and a relatively human capital-intensive agriculture. And a relatively human capital-intensive slavery. Isn't it nice how they rephrase all this stuff? Isn't it really cool how they basically are just like, yeah, they had lots of fucking slaves. Human capital-intensive agriculture. During the Second World War, Algeria came under Vichy control before being liberated by the Allies in Operation Torch, which saw the first large-scale development or deployment of American troops in the North African campaign. Gradually, dissatisfaction among the Muslim population, which lacked a political and economic status under the colonial regime, gave rise to demands for greater political autonomy and eventually independence. In May 1945, the uprising against the occupying French forces, so this is your capitalist success story, by the way, was suppressed through what is now known as the Serif Igualada massacre. Tensions between the two population groups came to a head in 1954 when the first violent events of what was later called the Algerian War began after the publication of the Declaration of the 1st of November 1954. Historians have estimated that between 30,000 and 150,000 Harkis and their dependents were killed by the National Liberation Front or by lynch mobs in Algeria. The FLN used hit-and-run tactics in Algeria and France as part of its war, and the French conducted several severe reprisals. In addition, the French destroyed over 8,000 villages and relocated over 2 million Algerians to concentration camps. Great success story. Capitalist success story. 1954, my man. 1954, your great capitalist success story here. Development index is through the roof. The war led to the death of hundreds of thousands of Algerians and hundreds of thousands of injuries. Historians like Alistair Home and Raymond Aron state the actual number of Algerian Muslim dead was far greater than the original FLN and official French estimates, but was less than a million deaths claimed by the Algerian government after independence. Home estimated casualties during the span of 8 years to be around 700,000. The war uprooted more than 2 million Algerians. Yep, normal capitalist. Like, this is normal. This is basically what I expect to see. So let's go into the 3 decades of independence. Let's just continue on here with high development index, capitalist success story. The number of European pieds noirs who fled Algeria totaled more than 900,000 between 1962 and 1964. The exodus to mainland France accelerated after the Oran massacre of 1962, in which hundreds of militants entered European sections of the city and began attacking civilians. Algeria's first president was the Front de Libération Nationale leader, Ahmed Ben Bella. Morocco's claim to portions of Western Algeria led to the Sand War in 1963. Real stable, right? This is good stability you like to see under capitalism. Ben Bella was overthrown in 1965 by Houari Boumediene, his former ally and defense minister. Under Ben Bella, the government had become increasingly socialist and authoritarian, a meaningless word that means nothing. And I mean, yeah, you're in a war, I guess. I guess you're going to pass rules and expect people to follow those rules, I suppose. Authoritarian! Boardman continued this trend. However, he relied much more on his army for support. He reduced the sole legal party to a symbolic role. He collectivized agriculture and launched a massive industrialization drive. Oh, collectivizing agriculture. Oh, okay, cool. High development index. Major capitalist success story. Oil extraction facilities were nationalized. Here you go. So where's the coup? Oil extraction facilities were nationalized. Here comes the CIA coup, you guys. This was especially beneficial to the leadership after the international 1973 oil crisis. Oh, so the nationalization of resources was helpful. Interesting. Boumediene's successor, Shadi Ben Jeddah, introduced some liberal economic reforms. Oh, here comes the liberal economic reforms, you guys. IMF loan. He promoted a policy of Arabization in Algerian society and public life. Teachers of Arabic, brought in from other Muslim cultures, spread conventionally Islamic thought in schools and sowed the seeds of a return to Orthodox Islam. The Algerian economy became increasingly dependent on oil, pretty common, leading to hardship when oil prices collapsed during the 1980s oil glut. Fairly common story here. Economic recession caused by the crash in world oil prices resulted in Algerian social unrest during the 80s. By the end of the decade, I should actually pronounce this guy's name properly. Ben Jedid. That's just so many D's all in a row. Ben Jedid, I did it, introduced a multi-party system. Political parties developed, such as the Islamic Salvation Front and a broad coalition of Muslim groups. In December 1991, the Islamic Salvation Front dominated the first 2 rounds of legislative elections. Fearing the elections of an Islamist government, the authorities intervened on the 11th of January 1992, canceling the elections. Ben Jedid resigned, and a High Council of State was installed to act as the presidency. It banned the IFS, triggering a civil insurgency between the front's armed wing, the Armed Islamic Group, and the National Armed Forces, in which more than 100,000 people are thought to have died. The Islamist militants conducted a violent campaign of civilian massacres. Failed verification. So failed verification on that claim. The New York Times, okay. At several points in the conflict, the situation of Algeria became a point of international concern, most notably during the crisis in Air France. Algeria held elections in 1999, considered biased by international observers and most opposition groups, in which were won by President, this guy. He worked to restore, if this is your capitalist success story, my man, I'm seeing a lot of flaws. Seems tumultuous, lots of turmoil, right? Lots of things happening. Yeah. Capitalism is only 300 years old, but humanity cannot progress without capitalism. Yeah. Just total clown shoes. Like, there's no such thing as a society that ever advanced without capitalism, right? Capitalism is what created the ancient pyramids, right? The ancient societies of yore, some of the great wonders of the world were all created by capitalists. Dude, this story that I just read here about the most developed country, according to your index, not a good look. Like, not a good look. You understand? I'm not sitting here being like, oh wow, case made. Whoa, Algeria, the shining star, the glittering light. Wow, we did it, you guys. We did it. No, you don't, AK. Come on, don't fool yourself. What a fucking joke. Even if it only grew 11.5%, it doesn't grow 11.5%. It grew 0.3% over 10 years. What are you talking about? 1910 to 1921. Like maybe is that per year? 0.3%. Whoa. This is not the argument you want it to be, my man. Like, this just is not the argument you want it to be. like if you thought that this was going to lead me in a direction to be like, what an interesting point that just got brought up by this pro-capitalist. Because you know what I just read? I just read about a country that experienced a period of colonialism right at the exact time that all these African nations experienced the period of colonialism, fought back hard in order to overthrow these colonial owners, and then have periods of turmoil afterwards, struggling for power within it. Seems like a total waste of everybody's fucking time, is what it sounds like. Do I need to go over to Libya, their neighbor? Right? Do we need to keep having the same fucking conversation over and over and over and over and over and over and over again so that you can defend your 0.3% growth? Who gives a fuck about your growth, your 0.3% growth? Like, it's embarrassing. Like, do you know what the IMF has projected for China? Right? China's projected to grow over 5% this year. Forget about your 10-year span. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? The capitalist success story of Africa. What are you talking about? Like, yeah, Africans are revolting again against colonial rule. Yeah, there are still some countries that exist in this colonial period. There are still some countries that are still colonial vassals of France. Man, European capitalism's doing really great. You know, all you got to do is ignore all the slaves. Just ignore all the slaves. And the Europeans, they're doing great. Like, But capitalism isn't inherently evil like the Marxist Bible. You keep saying things like Marxist Bible, which makes me take you not seriously. Like it's an unserious thing to say. Marxist Bible. Like what a joke, right? Like what a cartoonish thing to say. Like you don't increase your credibility by saying that. I need you to understand that, right? Marxism is the scientific pursuit using historical observation, right, and material dialectics, right, to try to reduce that to a religion, to try to pretend as though what Marxists are doing is a religion and they have a Bible and an ideology and an orthodoxy is kind of clownish, frankly. And if you keep doing it, it just makes me take you not seriously. Especially like after doing this, dude, after you embarrassed yourself so thoroughly here. Like, this is embarrassing what you've done. Look, number went up at all. Capitalism work. No, like it's just so fucking embarrassing. Like, you just ignore the colonial period entirely, ignore the current colonialism that's happening in Africa, ignore the struggle that's happening, ignore the coups, ignore the overthrow, ignore the destruction, right, on behalf of the capitalist class so that they can gain resources in Africa and enrich themselves and make you better, right? So that you get to stand there and be like, capitalism's great because I'm rich. I don't care that I have slaves, literally. And then you stand there and say to the people who are pointing out the reality of the situation that we have a Bible. Fuck off. Like, it's embarrassing. Okay? So, I think I'm good with you. I think we're good. I think I'm going to put you in AK territory. I don't know what's going on in my chat over here. It's not the goal to make number go big, mean good. It's about self-determination to the most extreme. Well, I mean, like, certainly there is, like, a hope that development will improve, but if you want to see actual development in a serious way, you want to look at China. Like, really. Like, you really, really want to be looking at China, and you really want to be learning as much as you possibly can from China. Right? You don't want to be trying to defend capitalism by bringing up the history of Africa. Like, Jesus. Like, that's a losing argument if I've ever seen one. Right? We'll just ignore the colonial period entirely. We'll just ignore the entire history of American capitalism and its interaction with Africa. We'll just ignore the slave trade. We'll just ignore the extraction of wealth. We'll just ignore all of this kind of stuff. Right? Like, do you read these comments before you post them, my man? Like, really? Yeah, the colonialism is responsible for having them back a starting point in capitalism, an advantage to Europeans. So just, the game's up, right? We're good. Like, game's up. You confess. Great. But, okay, they're all growing at different starting points. Yeah, the starting points that capitalism created for them. Those are the starting points. Like, and they're not growing because of capitalism. They're growing in spite of capitalism. This is what these capitalist apologists don't get. That humanity wants to develop itself. That humans do develop themselves. That's part of being alive. That humans pursue things like meaning and the desire to improve their lot and the desire to improve themselves around them. It's just kind of what humans do. And that and what you're doing by trying to take credit for the development of these nations while they are literally experiencing the jackboot of capitalism on their necks, is you're trying to take credit for a development that's their responsibility and that they did in the first place in spite of capitalism. They didn't develop because of capitalism. They developed in spite of capitalism. And how do we know that's true? Because every single time any country actually gets the jackboot of capitalism off of it, it develops at a rate that is faster than the imperial core, and certainly faster than the colonial victims of the imperial core. This is what makes your argument so fucking embarrassing. That every single time humanity is allowed to pursue its objectives without capitalists involved, it does so faster than the imperial core, faster than the Americans. Why do you think China is flourishing? Why do you think China is blowing up the way it's blowing up right now? Why do you think it's overwhelming the United States economically? Why do you think it's becoming the most powerful superpower? Because when it looks at Marxism, it goes, yeah, we should listen to that. And every so often they turn over to the Americans and they say, okay, what do you guys have to say? But like when Milton Friedman went over there and started talking about how they should privatize their school system, the Chinese thought he was crazy. They literally looked at him like, oh, you're a lunatic. Privatize our, why would we ever do that? That's wild. Why would any culture privatize their school system? It's just begging for a class-based system to exist in your borders. Get rid of it. And they have. Like this odd, strange idea that says that we can just ignore the history of capitalism, ignore what it's actually doing, and then take any insular, tiny, itsy-bitsy, little success, no matter how insignificant, and claim that as a win for capitalism. Like, it's weird. It's weird what capitalists do. All you got to do is ignore the slavery. All you got to do is just ignore the supply chain. Like, all you know is that you're holding on to a little device. That's all you know. All you know is that you're hanging on to this thing. Oh, little rectangle. Ooh, rich, wealthy. We're the greatest. Little rectangle. No conceptualization whatsoever of where that thing came from, how it was manufactured, what the process of it was, what the history of it is. Like, just no connection whatsoever. Yeah, John, Venezuela built more than 400 homes despite the crushing sanctions. Yeah, it's amazing what you can do when you decide to do it. Right? When you actually say, build those homes. It's amazing. I love this. AK, facts, historical knowledge are lies to you guys? Question mark? AK, you don't know anything. Like, come on, man. Like, I don't know why you're still commenting. June. Of course Marxism is a religion. I light little candles and pray to Marx every single day, so that Marx will bring me gifts if I'm good, because he sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. There's certainly no capitalist gods. He knows when you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sakes. Be sure to ask your parents for lots of gifts. Go out and buy a bunch of useless shit. Santa Claus is judging your actions. No capitalist gods. Sure, there's no capitalist gods. Sure. This is actually something about the Israeli conflict that I think is absolutely worth bringing up. Because right now, so far, our story thus far. Welcome to Israel, the disaster film. So Israel has been trying to get into the Gaza Strip, right? It's been laying waste to it, bombing the shit out of it, turning it into a Stalingrad kind of situation, right? Making it really like a bad situation to try to get in there and to try and live in, right? Some might argue, in fact, by some might argue, I say it's the Jews themselves might argue in the Jerusalem Post that what they're trying to do is a genocide. Some might make that argument. So that's been going on for about 80 days now. It's been horrible. What a terrible time for everyone involved. The Houthis, these madmen of Yemen, basically went, well, fuck that shit. We're not going to put up with that nonsense. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to blow up any Israeli boat that comes through here. You're going to send something over here, we're going to blow it up. Right? So that means that the Suez Canal, useless. Israel cannot get goods out of here to China. Clunk, clunk. This has created like 30 to 40% of an economic decline in Israel. They can't get goods out of the country, right? It's an embargo by the Yemeni. So super ballers. These guys are training troops that they plan to send to Palestine. How are they going to get them there? Right? And the Americans can't actually mount an offensive because right now, the way it's working is that the Yemeni are saying boats can come through, not Israeli boats. If we even suspect that there is Israeli goods on your boat, we'll blow it up. And so the trading companies are like, okay, no Israeli goods. We're not trading with the Israelis. We're done. So that they can get their goods through. If America attacks, they'll blockade the thing for real. Then it'll be nothing will go through the Suez Canal. And it's not like that war will be like, America steps in and we're done. It'll be a fight. It'll be a real war, right? The Americans are showing over and over and over and over again how poorly equipped they are to actually win conflicts, right? They've shown over and over again in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Ukraine, all of the conflicts that have existed in this region here, all of the conflicts in here, all of the conflicts in here. America has lost control of it all. They can't fight against the Yemeni, right? They're not going to win that conflict. They're not going to win that war. Nobody's going to put their boots on the ground. They're not going to get 80,000 Marines to go into Yemen. So the blockade against the Israelis persists. Well, we also are now seeing stories of the Israelis bombing territory in Jordan, right? Bombing territories in Lebanon, right? Right? We literally have Hezbollah, Israel's killing of top Revolutionary Guards member in Syria, crosses a line. Knesset member and former UN ambassador Danny Danon said Monday night in an interview at Can Bet that the state of Israel has received inquiries from countries willing to take in refugees from the Gaza Strip. I received inquiries from various countries, from countries that are ready to take in refugees, and in the past were even in contact with the state of Israel on that issue. These are countries from South America and Africa, adding that some of them asked for payment and some of them asked for other things. According to the Knesset member, this is voluntary migration of Palestinians who wish to leave. It happens in every war. Look at what happened in Syria. 1.5 million went to Jordan, 3 million went to Turkey, another few went to Europe, Danon said, suggesting that we will keep in touch with the countries of the region first. Like literally, we're just like extracting these people, right? If Hezbollah, that article had very little to do with the headline was, but if Hezbollah gets involved in this conflict in Israel, it's going to be a huge disaster. If this war extends, it'll be a huge disaster for Israel. More so than it's already been. Right? More so than it's already been. Yeah, colonialism's not... yeah. Yeah, dude. Like, my man, Gan, you gotta learn more about the history of colonialism, because I just think you're hand-waving it away. That's all. You're just hand-waving it away. Slavery was so long ago. Like, if you just ignore all the things that are going on, capitalism's great. Man, I really want to put a nail in the coffin for you, okay? Unconvincing. Unpersuasive. Not convinced. What you have convinced me of is that there's lots of people out there who want to ignore all of the evidence. Right? So as long as you just ignore the evidence, ignore the history of colonialism, ignore the current history of colonialism, ignore the history of slavery, ignore the history of the IMF, ignore the history of the World Bank, ignore the history of the United States military, ignore the history of imperialism. If you ignore all of those things, then sure, capitalism's the best system ever. We can never do any better. You're right. Hey, okay, hey, yeah, we're good here. I don't need this language in my chat. No, I don't even care what side you're on, Must. I haven't been paying that much attention to the Twitch chat. I don't need this chat. I don't need this in my chat at all. I don't care what side of the conversation you're actually on. You don't get to use that language in here and stay. Bye. Like, I don't mind if you guys are having robust conversations. I don't mind if you guys are having, like, big debates. I don't even mind if you guys are, like, especially in the Twitch chat, I don't mind if you guys are, like, throwing like pears and stuff at each other and like pointing and being like, you are an incorrect person who is very incorrect, and I am the correct one. But no, too bad. No, too bad. No. Like, no. You understand? Like, I reserve timeouts for people who just have closed their brain and are still filling my chat with garbage. Like philosophical garbage. If you're going to use a certain level of language, and I think we're good, and I don't need you around anymore. From the Jerusalem Post, the facts demonstrate that I got to read this article, actually. I just have to. I have to read this article out loud. It's unbelievable to me, you guys. From the Jerusalem Post, written by Joel Roskin, certainly not a Nazi, why moving to the Sinai Peninsula is the solution for Gaza's Palestinians. Opinion. The Sinai Peninsula comprises one of the most suitable places on earth to provide the people of Gaza with hope and a peaceful future. The 365-kilometer square Gaza Strip has remained a hot potato in Israel-Egypt relations since its conquest by the Egyptian army in 1948, as part of Egypt's failed attempt to annihilate the newly born state of Israel. Egypt invaded Israel. I love it. Start the story by making Israel the bad guy, making Israel the victims, for sure. Israel are the victims. They're certainly not the colonizers. Okay. Egypt invaded Israel along two main axes, reaching the outskirts of Jerusalem and only 20 kilometers short of Tel Aviv. But the Israel Defense Forces pushed off this defensive, certainly not with any help from imperialists at all. No help from the British, no help from the Americans, I'm sure. These battles generated a wave of refugees that found haven in the Gaza Strip, which remained under Egyptian military control until 1967. Since 1948 and up until the current partial release of some of the Israeli babies, children, and women taken hostage by Hamas terrorists, the Egyptians have been significantly involved in the politics and economy of the Gaza Strip. The Egyptians locked the residents of Gaza and the refugees of the 1948 war in the Gaza Strip. It was the Egyptians that did it. It was the Egyptians that did it. That's why this section of Israel is called Egypt. This is where Egypt is, right here. Egypt. Oh my God, it hurts me. It causes me physical pain. With the backing of the United Nations still denying them the right to rebuild their lives in all Arab countries, including the adjacent Sinai Peninsula of Egypt. This harsh policy was one of the major and long-term catalysts for the intensifying human stagnation of now circa 1.8 million inhabitants within the Strip. So it's Egypt's fault and the UN's fault. Got it. Beyond the abduction, mutilation, burning, rape, and murder of 1,200 Israelis and other nationals, the Hamas terrorist invasion of Israel on October 7th, the beginning of history, destroyed many Israeli agricultural villages. This barbarian murder fest led by the IDF. This barbarian murder fest led... I thought it said led by the IDF. No, it led the IDF to conquer the northern Gaza Strip and the Hamas-infested Gaza metropolis as part of Israel's goal to destroy Hamas terror capabilities. As civilians were ordered to move south, the southern Gaza Strip became a haven for most of Gaza's residences. My favorite part is that usually when they were ordered to move places, they then bombed those areas. It's the greatest. Not a genocide, though. Totally normal. The Battle of the Northern Strip generated significant damage and destruction of buildings utilized by Hamas. Damage to the immense terror tunnel system further destabilized the metropolis's substrate. Major portions of the metropolis are considered incapacitated and cannot be simply fixed. Rather, the damaged and destroyed structures must be completely torn down. The tunneled and consequently exploded and bulldozed soil must undergo extensive environmental and engineering rehabilitation. So we need to cleanse the land, you see. We've got to cleanse the land. We've got to tear everything down and rip it all up and make it so it's like they were never there, right? Just got to cleanse the land. Just a little cleansing. In other words, oh man, they're restating it. Okay, cool. I thought I had to restate it. No, they're going to do it for me. In other words, the metropolis has to be fully evacuated, cleansed, redesigned. Oh, that's nice. Let's get some redesigning up in here. Monitored, right? Surveillance system, spied on. Big Brother only counts if they're white. And only then rebuilt to provide habitable and economic conductive conditions. Yes. It's only conductive to habitable conditions if we build it. Mm-hmm. Such an effort requires unique expertise and immense funding and will take considerable time that cannot be calculated. Therefore, the war is anticipated to end with a unique humanitarian challenge of how to construct a better future for the people of Gaza. You see, this was all done with them in mind. We care. We care about the people of Gaza, which is why they must be bombed. Since Israel's unconditional turnover of the Gaza Strip, they cannot shut up about this. They just cannot shut up about this. We gave it to them though. They were there, and we said, "Oh, of course, you can have this tiny little strip of land. Please, we're so gracious. We're so gracious to you, the Palestinians, that the land that you're living on, which is in a city that we can't actually get you out of, we'll let you have it, as long as we get all the rest of it. Remember when all of this was also your land? Remember when all of this was considered Palestine? Well, we're letting you have this instead. Aren't we so gracious and full of love in the deepest of our hearts? The deepest of our hearts." These people are nightmares, man. This is some nightmare psychopath shit. Since Israel's unconditional turnover of the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian Authority in 2005, Gazans have completely failed to generate a productive Palestinian-administered entity. I mean, Hamas is literally elected. It was an elected body. It was elected by the Palestinian people. It's like, and it seems like it's being pretty effective. You guys are doing a whole thing about it. Despite generous economic support, mainly from America, Europe, Qatar, and the UN. Not us. Not us. From Israel. No, that's not going to happen. This may be associated with the coupled effect of an intrinsic hatred focus, fanatic anti-Israel Islamic culture, and links with Iran, along with limited geographical conditions, poor natural and human resources, and a high population density. Bro, I love this. I just love this. This may be associated with the coupled effect of an intrinsic... I like coupled effect, and then he lists like 28 things. Usually when it's a coupled effect, it's like two things, and they couple. Hence the phrase couple. But this guy just goes ahead and lists all of the sins of Israel, and just is like, yeah, they just gotta go over it, you know? With the couple's effects of an intrinsic hatred-focused, fanatic, anti-Israel Islamic culture. Can't imagine where that's coming from, my man. Can't imagine why the Palestinians would have this, like, fanatic... anti-Zionist culture, right? Like, I don't know why. What could have possibly happened? Could it have been the Nakba? Could it have been the ethnic cleansing? What a chin scratcher. Links with Iran. Oh shit, you guys. Hamas has allies with other countries that are trying to support them as we commit a genocide against them. What? What could that possibly mean? Along with limited geographical conditions that we created, poor natural and human resources that we created, and a high population density, which we created. The situation raises serious doubts that any type of future self-sustainable efforts will yield a stable and free socioeconomic culture and promising future in the Strip, which we've generated and created on purpose. We keep carpet bombing them and nothing's materializing. We keep carpet bombing them. They can't build a stable society for themselves. We keep forcing them off farmland. They can't grow any crops in the city. Well, what a bunch of lazy losers. There must be something intrinsically wrong with the Arabs. Can't imagine why peace isn't flourishing. Oh my god. Oh hey, my computer just reset. My Chromebook just reset. I wonder if that does anything to Twitch. I don't know if it does or doesn't. It's like, but it's just, it's the same kind of argument where people are like, oh, communism never works. That's why we carpet bomb it. We keep carpet bombing communist nations so they're unsuccessful. See how unsuccessful these communist nations are, which is why we have to bomb them? Makes so much sense to carpet bomb these nations, right? Just gotta carpet bomb the nation, and then communism doesn't work, and communism doesn't work because we carpet bomb it. We're a normal people. This is a normal thing to say. John does not support hate speech for the CSIS agents out there. Thank you, Mikhail, looking out for me. I appreciate it. I do. I don't know if I said hello to you, Fiddleford, but hello, Mikhail. I think same story. To anybody who I didn't say hello to, if you're in the chat, hello. I'm having a day. I'm having a day. I wonder if my Twitch chat is still going. Is that a thing? My computer reset itself. The one that I have Twitch up on, so... Yeah, looks like we're all good. Okay. So a creative solution is needed ASAP. I got a creative solution. Stop bombing Palestinians. There's a creative solution. Maybe stop ethnic cleansing them. Here's a creative solution that we could have done 2 years ago. A two-state solution. There's an interesting idea that I think people would have actually been amicable about. Sinai's promising characteristics. The adjoining Sinai Peninsula, in essence, is the exact opposite of the Gaza Strip. Here we go. We're going to get into like I want to know exactly what they're talking about. Here, hold on. Sinai, so come on. Sinai Peninsula. Yeah, here we go. Let's take a look at it. Oh, it's just way down here. This is the whole peninsula. Got it. Okay, cool. I just wanted to be clear. I just was like, so their plan is to basically send Gaza into the desert. Just basically be like, you'll be fine. It's the desert. You'll be fine. Oh man, what a group of psychos these people are. Okay. The adjoining Sinai Peninsula, in essence, is the exact opposite of the Gaza Strip, comprising one of the most suitable places on Earth to provide the people of Gaza with hope and a peaceful future. Covering 60,000 kilometers square, 165 times larger than the Strip. I love how this is turning into like an infomercial. It's like a sales pitch now, right? Oh, I went down and I lost my spot. Everybody. Its population is barely around 1/3 of Gaza's, making it one of the emptiest places in the Mediterranean region, because it's a desert. Although under Egyptian governance, it is an integral part, geological continuation of Israel and the Gaza Strip, with which it shares a 200-kilometer and a 14-kilometer long border, respectively. Therefore, the geographic setting of the Mediterranean coast of northern Sinai is also a physical continuation of the Gaza Strip, with ample, shallow groundwater in the northeast. Here, due to the intensive smuggling of arms to Hamas via Sinai in the last few years, Egypt fully destroyed the residential infrastructure bordering the Gaza Strip and expelled the local population. In northwest Sinai, Egypt has invested immensely in building for agriculture, including freshwater canals. Furthermore, Egypt has surprisingly wired Sinai with excellent infrastructure, overshooting its civilian and industrial needs. These include an array of paved roads and highways connected by tunnels beneath the Suez Canal to mainland Egypt. The facts demonstrate that the northern Sinai Peninsula is an ideal location to develop a spacious resettlement for the people of Gaza. Its opening areas, along with the existing infrastructure, can easily host large-scale development projects that, if led by the Chinese and supported by local labor, for example, can easily mature in just 1 to 2 years. Dude, this is like the sleaziest sales pitch ever. Do you need to be genocided? Have we got a place for you? Firm American and international guidance lined with financial and operative support can surely pave the way to this creative and prosperous solution and jointly help Egypt's dire demographic and economic situation that is challenging its political authority. Israel will also be cooperative in sharing its high-tech-oriented agricultural capabilities with Egypt, as it did following the peace treaty in the early 1980s. Got a little piece in there for Egypt. A little like, you take our refugees? We give you some technology? If Egypt bravely chooses to change its rigid, old-fashioned policy of keeping Palestinian Gazans in constant distress and consents to such an endeavor, its geopolitical gains will be threefold. It will be hailed by the international community as the savior of the dire plights of Gazans. No. You'll be seen as Nazi collaborators. That's how history will remember you. It will strengthen its status as a leader of the Arab world. And it will finally fulfill its 30-plus-year-old plan to settle the Sinai and strengthen its control of this zone. Because nothing says control like introducing a bunch of genocided refugees. However, history has taught us that Gazans, despite their complaints about the humanitarian situation, may object towards genuine rehabilitation programs. This stubbornness substantially relies on their desire to destroy Israel, which repeatedly comes at their own expense. The ongoing obliteration of Hamas, which terrorizes Palestinian Authority officials in many Gaza residences, may pave the way to the emergence of the proposed Sinai solution, if presented in a wise and discreet manner that conforms to the Middle East mentality. Brutal. Just fucking crazy brutal. Like, just crazy brutal, right? Ruthless. Totally ruthless. This needs to be read by the women at that Juice Media, right? The ones that do the government thing in Australia. I hope you guys know what I'm talking about. Just like that sugary sweet, like, we here at the Israeli administration care for the needs of the Gazans. We're here to look out for you, finding equitable solutions for everyone. Yeah, the Juice Media YouTube channel. Yeah. Thank you, a box. I appreciate the clarification. Yeah, if the Sinai Peninsula is so great, why don't they go there? Yeah. Yeah, real estate salesman. Yeah. It sounds like they're selling mass land to a bloody aristocrat, for sure. For sure. Like, it's just brutal to be alive right now in this, and to be witnessing this. Like, and to know that it's pointless. Like, what are we getting out of this? That's what I keep asking. Like, what are we actually gaining here? Like, what's the win? So Israel gets to be a state here. Okay. Like, certainly the Israelis care about that. Right? Certainly the Israelis give a shit. What are we winning? Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, you know what? I'm convinced. This isn't a genocide at all. These people are not arguing in favor of a genocide. It's just the mass relocation of a people against their will. What? What's the problem? Like, geez Louise. Meanwhile, as we are in the closing 15 minutes, chilling effect. This is from the CBC. People expressing pro-Palestinian views censored, suspended from work and school. Employers, institutions alerted to individuals supporting Palestinians in Israel-Hamas war, CBC has learned. Restaurant staff losing their jobs for cheering on a pro-Palestinian protest. A Palestinian-Canadian journalist fired for her social media posts calling for a free Palestine. Medical residents flagged to potential hiring committees for their support of Palestinians. These are just some of the many instances across Canada in which employees and students have faced firings, suspensions, or calls for them to not be hired based on their publicly stated political stance on the Israel-Hamas war. It's a trend that has been reported not just in Canada, but also in the US and Europe and across various industries, including media, law, healthcare, and the service sector. According to 3 Ontario-based lawyers who spoke to CBC News, some employers and institutions have been quick to take action against employees or students, creating an environment in which many are afraid they will lose their jobs or face consequences to their education if they express a political stance in favor of one side, Palestinians, during this war. I can tell you personally, in the last month and a half, I've probably spoken with someone at least once a day about this, said Jackie Esmond, a labor lawyer at Toronto-based firm Cavaluzzo Law. They're not always cases that we take on, but we do have in the range of 8 to 10 cases that we're actively working on at the moment. I'm not seeing people making what I would consider hate speech or discriminatory speech. None of the lawyers who spoke with CBC News had been notified of similar cases relating to expression of support for Israel. When it comes to pro-Israel views, Toronto-based immigration lawyer Debbie Rashlis said she is not aware personally of anyone who has lost their job or has been threatened by losing their job for expressing an opinion. I've certainly seen stories of people who have chosen to leave jobs where they don't feel supported as an Israeli or a Jewish person, or don't feel comfortable with statements that organizations they work for made, Rashlis said. Esmond noted a November 23rd United Nations statement in which a group of UN special rapporteurs expressed alarm at what they say is a global stifling of critique of Israeli government policies, or a call for ceasefire, which they said have in too many contexts been misleadingly equated with support for terrorism or anti-Semitism. The statement that said artists, journalists, academics, athletes, and protesters have all been censored, suspended, blacklisted, or otherwise threatened with workplace consequences for expressing their views. Toronto lawyer Nora Fath Alipour said she has received up to 300 calls for help from people in Canada and the US after posting on LinkedIn with an offer to represent people facing academic or professional discipline for speaking out about Palestine. A lot of the time, what's happening to them is a result of anonymous sources reaching out to their employers or their institutions, raising concerns with either their behavior or something they have or are alleged to have said, she said. It's not always apparent which comments or actions are the source of contention for employers and universities, but in some cases, documentation seen by CBC News makes it clear which words are seen as problematic. Last month, the University of Ottawa suspended medical resident Dr. Yipin Ji after he posted pro-Palestinian comments on his personal social media that resulted in internal complaints against him, according to an email sent by the university's legal counsel to Ji's lawyer, seen by CBC News. The email references Ji's post of the slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," as one of the reasons for his suspension. The phrase, reads the email, is seen by the university as a call for the ethnic cleansing of Jewish people from Israel. Some experts familiar with the origin and history of the phrase have told CBC its meaning and use is more complicated. That complication being that Israel is the aggressor. This is like saying, oh man, we should blow up that Death Star, and then having somebody be like, you want to commit a genocide against Death Starians? On Friday, G announced on X that he had resigned from the board of directors on the Canadian Medical Association, saying that the attempts to repair the harm caused by the CMA's leadership reaction to his post were unsuccessful, and his relationship with the CMA has become untenable and irreparable. In October, a nephrologist at Mackenzie Richmond Hill Hospital in Richmond Hill, Ontario, was suspended after posting pro-Palestinian views on social media, and later reinstated after the hospital said it determined it was safe for him to return to work. Last month, according to an official email seen by CBC News, George Brown College in Toronto put Bashir Munyi, a culinary instructor, on paid leave while it investigated complaints related to one of his Instagram posts. Munier, who has worked at the college for 7 years, told CBC the school did not specify to him which post needed removing. The last post on his account related to the war, made before he was put on paid leave, uses the phrase "from the river to the sea" and the words genocide and apartheid to describe Israeli government actions against Palestinians. Munier said he was hurt, shocked, and frightened by seeing how an institution can punish you based on allegations prior to providing you the opportunity to either rectify yourself or having the opportunity to explain or express your own sentiments. In a statement to CBC, a representative of George Brown College said, "In line with our standard process upon receiving complaints, it has been concluded that there was no violation of college policies. Munier, Xi, and others affected in the same way have hired legal representation to determine their next steps." Coordinated efforts. Nearly 650 lawyers, law students, and professors across Canada have signed an open letter to Canada's legal community, published on November 6th, that notes a chilling effect on freedom of expression in the legal community since the outbreak of the war. The letter alleges that some in the profession are contracting the employers of lawyers and encouraging they be fired for their pro-Palestinian advocacy, and that those engaged in pro-Palestinian advocacy, many of whom are younger and people of color, are being bullied for it. In similar statements on October 25th, the BC Civil Liberties Association likened the current climate around discussions of the Israel-Hamas war to the period of escalated Islamophobia and anti-Arab racism in the post-9/11 era. The statement also expressed concern about a chilling effect on free expression in support of Palestinians. Surveillance of people's public stance on Palestinians exists in private social media groups and secondary school classrooms as well. Screenshots sent to CBC News by members of a closed Facebook group called Canadian Jewish Physicians shows a handful of members saying they have compiled a list of 271 medical students who signed an open letter calling for a ceasefire and an end to targeting healthcare facilities and workers in Gaza. The stated intention is to share this list with program directors ahead of residency interviews. 2 employees at the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies, a Toronto-based nonprofit rights organization dedicated to Holocaust and anti-Semitism education, told CBC News that the center's educators who teach workshops and courses in schools have been instructed to report students who make comments critical of Israel to the organization. CBC has agreed to keep the employees' names confidential because of the potential risk to their employment. Comments or questions referencing genocide or occupation of Palestinian people, and anything seen as critical of Israel at all, are to be reported to the organization, said one of the employees. Isn't that the creepiest phrase you've heard? To be reported to the organization. Yee. The idea is to contact the school, inform the school they have an anti-Semitism problem, and pressure the school to shut down the Palestinian support by accusing them of anti-Semitism, encouraging more pro-Zionist workshops or lessons, they said. Both employees said these directives were communicated by central leadership, verbally during the meetings with the organizer's director of education and sometimes the CEO, but were not written down. They push for us to understand the stance of the organization, which is being pro-Israel, said the second employee. If you're not pro-Israel, then you're anti-Semitic. Both said they do not and will not report these types of comments to the organization, despite instructions to do so. The Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center has not responded to CBC's repeated requests for comment about these allegations. Repercussions for people who have expressed solidarity with Palestinians have been varied, but in a few of the most extreme cases, they have resulted in those people losing their jobs. In October, Zahra al-Akaras, a Palestinian-Canadian journalist at Global News, was fired from her job for failing to comply with the organization's demands to remove social media posts that it said advocate for violence and gave a perception of serious journalistic bias. At the time, she was on maternity leave. Correspondence seen by CBC shows a manager asked al-Akras to remove any post directed at a government official and posts with the hashtag Free Palestine, Gaza under attack, and Gaza genocide. Al-Akaris' social media activity ranges from thanking climate activist Greta Thunberg for expressing support for Palestinians on X to quoting Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's reference to Palestinians as human animals on her Instagram story, a post that disappears in 24 hours, and criticizing Israeli President Isaac Herzog's comments saying there is no innocence in the Gaza Strip. Al-Akaris, 28, said Global had never flagged her social media posts before, even, for example, when she expressed support for Ukraine during the Ukraine-Russia war. I have always been sharing my public opinions and views on political events happening around the world, including the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Al-Akaris said. No one ever reached out to me from Global and asked me to delete these comments because they're unbalanced. In emails, Al-Akaris repeatedly asked for a few lists of the posts the company wanted for her to remove. The request was denied. Global News did not answer questions about Al-Akaris' dismissal, citing staff confidentiality. It also did not respond to a question about whether it saw her posts on Ukraine. But in an emailed statement, a Global News spokesperson said, "Commentary by our employees expressing or amplifying violence or discrimination against any group is not condoned and is a violation of our company's policies." CBC and other media have similar limits on employees' use of social media. Social media guidance for CBC reporters is outlined under a company's journalistic standards and practices. It reads, "Our values of impartiality precludes our news and current affairs staff from expressing their personal opinions on matters of controversy on all our platforms." Jacob Nelson, an assistant professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Utah, interviewed 37 journalists in the US and Canada about newsroom social media policies for a study published earlier this year. According to him, social media policies for journalists are meant to protect companies from being labeled as biased based on what employees are posting, but are not applied consistently. Oftentimes, the thing that's being evaluated in terms of did you or did you not abide by the social media policy is not the post itself, Nelson said. It's often about the reception. How did people react to that post? Reaction is also what drove the employer's response to an incident outside Moxie's restaurant in Toronto in October, says lawyer Kariyama Saad. Saad was documenting pro-Palestinian protests in downtown Toronto on October 21st and uploaded a video to X that showed several uniformed Moxie's employees and customers who came out to cheer on the protesters. Within 24 hours and after dozens of social media comments calling for a boycott of the company and for its employees to be fired, Moxie's posted a statement on its corporate X account. "We sincerely apologize to anyone impacted negatively by these actions," it said, noting that disciplinary actions will be taken for all involved. When asked about this incident by CBC News, the company said the employees seen in the video are no longer working at Moxie's, but did not specify the reason, due to the confidentiality and safety of staff and guests. Moxie's is a hospitality company, not a political organization, the company said via email. Any actions that we have taken with our team members are solely related to employee behavior while at work or in uniform. Yeah, not political at all, right? It's not political when you fire people for political reasons. It's only political when people act out against your political vision. Got it. But Saad suspects social media pylons and pressure from lobbying groups played a role in the company's response. She pointed to a post by B'nai B'rith Canada, a Jewish community and advocacy organization that describes itself as a staunch defender of the state of Israel, whose mandate includes combating racism and anti-Semitism, and went about a week after the protests. Following further discussions with the restaurant, we are happy to report that the employees in question are no longer working at Moxie's, it said. In an email to CBC News, B'nai B'rith Canada CEO Michael Moyston said the organization had reached out to Northland Properties, the parent company of Moxie's, after Moxie's had publicly said it intended to investigate the employees, and requested that we be updated to the results of their investigation. According to Esmonde, a labor lawyer with Cavaluzu Law, assuming the employees are not part of a union, they would need to either sue Moxie's for a wrongful dismissal or make a complaint to a provincial employment standard officer if they wanted to challenge their termination. In practice, as likely low-paid and precarious employees, they have little practical recourse if they are unjustly terminated, Esmond said. It sounds like social media played a significant role in their termination, but I do not have information about whether there were concerns released prior to the social media posts. So anybody pretending like there isn't like a blacklisting happening, yeah, there's a blacklisting happening. All right, we reached the end of this one, guys. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you never realize it. You just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel, revolt, repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.